Okay, cool.
Okay, this evening our chair and vice chair are not present, so we'll start the meeting with roll call and then proceed to establish first whether or not we have a quorum, and second to establish an acting chair for the meeting. So this is the meeting for the continued meeting from February 19th, now happening on February 26th, 2025. So for our roll call, Jim Morrison.
Here.
Gregory Rush.
Here.
Michael Weeken.
Here.
Tim Thompson.
Here.
Richard Parsons.
Here.
Then we have excused, we have James Bisbee, Trip Ewer, Molly Bales, and absent we have Mark Bartner. So we do have a quorum. So we may proceed with a process to select a chair for this evening.
I move we appoint Tim Thompson to serve as chair this evening, acting chair this evening.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that Tim Thompson act as the chair for this particular meeting. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, Mr. Thompson, you are the presiding officer for this evening.
Congratulations.
Okay, our first or second item on the agenda is any adjustments to the agenda. Matt, are you aware of whether we have an applicant that will not be here?
No.
Okay. And let's see, do we have the applicant for 525, 316, and 311? 525 Queen Street, 316 Avenue C, and 311 Avenue C. Yeah, okay, and I see that 403 East Front Street. A question to the commissioners. 403 East Front Street is a fairly complex application that involves demolition as well as redevelopment. Would it make sense to move that to the end of the agenda in order for these other applications, which I think are fairly small, just user-friendly, trying to process the quicker ones first?
Mr. Chair, if I may, 311 Avenue C is a demolition and redevelopment application, so it may not be so small.
Okay.
But perhaps you could move New Queen and 316C ahead of the two demolition cases.
Okay. All right. Care to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor of moving 525 Queen Street and 316 Avenue C to the
And 208.
208 to the top of the hearings tonight?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
Who made the motion?
I did.
Second.
Mr. Walker,
Mm-hmm.
second was Rush.
Thank you.
Okay. So our first, let's see, for our hearings, we're about to begin the hearings tonight for COA applications. The Historic Preservation Commission is a public commission appointed by the City of New Bern's Board of Aldermen. It's responsible for preserving and safeguarding New Bern's locally designated historic districts, which consists of downtown and Riverside, based on U.S. Department of Interior standards, state statutes, city ordinances, and New Bern's historic guidelines. Two of the major tasks of the HBC include approving applications for certificate of appropriateness and preventing demolition of historic structures due to neglect. The HBC holds a quasi-judicial hearing on an application for a certificate of appropriateness. The Commission hears sworn testimony and evidence provided by the applicant, by parties who receive notice of the hearing, and by others who can justify that they have relevant evidence and are directly affected by the application. The commission cannot consider comments based on personal likes or dislikes, hearsay, or personal opinion that cannot be directly related to specific historic guidelines. Likewise, commissioners shall refrain from stating personal opinions, personal likes or dislikes, or hearsay during a hearing. The commission's decision on an application is based solely on testimony and evidence presented at a hearing that directly relates to the historic guidelines. So at this point, we need to swear in anyone who intends to speak or provide testimony tonight related to a COA application on this meeting's agenda.
So anyone doing so, wanting to speak this evening, testimony, please come forward.
Mr. Charlton.
For public comment, so
Yeah.
in general, we don't need to do something.
All right. And please, February 26th. Okay. So once you swear in, we all swear in, please come forward and state your name and your address.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth and to the best of your knowledge provide honest testimony and answers to any questions directed to you?
Yes.
Okay. Please make sure you sign the sheet.
What's your way to get the man? Find it. It makes it easy when I have one of these. I can try. Yeah. Just read aloud. We had a couple more people come in who are going to be speaking.
Mr. Chair, I think we have two additional witnesses who may not have been sworn, who just entered. The two gentlemen standing at the back of the line, they might need to be sworn as well.
Are either of you two gentlemen looking to make some comments about one of the projects this evening? Are you looking to chat? Then you can, this is just a then we're going to do that in a second. You want to do that while we're getting on the side?
Do
Swear
One
them
gentleman
in.
who does want to speak. Or
Ah.
may want to speak. Maybe.
Yeah, you should swear.
yeah.
Raise your right hand, please.
Do you swear to tell the truth and to the best of your knowledge provide honest testimony and answers to any questions directed to you?
All right. Then that can go from 15 on there and Travis. Go ahead and use the same.
Before we get to our first hearing, we've got everyone sworn in and signed up. Can we back up for just a minute? Got out of order a little bit here. The consent agenda for tonight, Matt, I don't believe we have any approval of minutes. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, there are several sets of minutes and several written decisions.
All right, so we've got 2 written decisions from the November meeting of 2024 for 212 South Front Street and 218 Pollock Street. And then, let's see, I'm looking for the approved for the minutes. See it from September regular meeting, November regular meeting, and I think that's it. Is that correct?
That's it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Any comments, questions, corrections to those?
Will you approve it?
So motion to approve these items under the consent agenda.
Second.
And that includes both the minutes and the written decisions.
Correct.
That's correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Now, we're about to start our first hearing tonight. Let me just quickly summarize how we will go about running the hearings. The HPC administrator will provide an overview of the application. The applicant or their representative has a chance to present anything else related to the application, make any comments. Proponents and opponents who receive notice of the hearing, in other words, you got a letter in the mail telling you that we're having a hearing, you have the opportunity to present any evidence related to the guidelines and the application. Rebuttal is allowed by the applicant and by proponents and opponents who receive notice. After that, others who can justify they have relevant information and will be directly affected by the application can present evidence. After that, the HPC administrator presents the staff's findings and recommendations on the application. The applicant or their representative has an opportunity to make any final comments on the application. Then at that point, the commissioners will discuss the evidence and may ask for clarification from any applicant or their representative or presenters. The chairman then calls for a motion to approve or deny the application with stated findings of fact. The motion is discussed by the commission, then the chair will call for a vote on the motion by the commission. A COA can be approved with conditions, or denied. Any questions on how we will generally run the hearings tonight? Okay. Then our first hearing tonight, based on our rearranged order, is 525 Queen Street.
You skip over to New Street?
I was doing these in order. Have I missed one here? 208 New Street.
And Mr. Chair, and several of the board members may know, but the application for 208 New Street has been withdrawn, so no action is required.
Okay. Then the next one would be 525 Queen Street. Do we have applicants, representatives there for this one? 525 Queen Street, going once, going twice.
Mr. Chair, do representatives need to be there? I don't believe so, do they?
Mr. Chair and Mr. Wonka, that's a good question. The burden of producing evidence rests on the applicant.
Yep.
So generally, the applicants are requested to come so that they can present any relevant information to you all. What you may consider doing in light of their absence, and I think they were anticipated to be here tonight, is to move to your next hearing and perhaps revisit the application for 525 Queen Street after you've addressed all the applicants who are present.
I think that's sound advice, but Matt, if I could ask about staff, do you let the applicants know that they are supposed to be here to talk about their project
Yes, we always do that. And then after the meeting was continued last week, immediately the next day I contacted the applicant. However, I do know the applicant lives out of state and may be expecting their representative to be here who may have missed the communication somehow. So.
Okay. So do you need a motion to kind of hold that one until later, or just kind of hold it on until we see what happens by the end of the meeting?
Well, I'll take Jamie's suggestion and we'll
Just
come
kind
back
of
to
hold.
this one
Sure.
before we conclude all of our hearings. Okay, so the next one is 316 Avenue C. We have representatives for that. Okay. If you'll come up front and Matt,
Yep.
do you want to present
All right.
an overview of the application?
And Mr. Chair, I don't know if the applicant was sworn in. I think she may have come in a bit tardy, so we may need...
tardy, sorry.
Okay, all right, no problem. So since this is a quasi-judicial hearing, we swear in anyone who is providing testimony, so forth. You need to sign the sheet up there. And if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth and to the best of your knowledge provide honest testimony and answers to any questions directed to you?
Yes.
All right. Very good.
All right. So I'll start with the presentation. This is the applicant's application. This is for 316 Avenue C, and the property owner is Melanie Mugford. And that's who's standing before you. And so the description, the guidelines, and the materials are outlined there, as well as the application is signed and dated. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. This is an aerial view that shows the property and some of the surrounding properties for this project. It's on a corner of North Pasteur and Avenue C. So North Pasteur is on the left and Avenue C is across the bottom. These are some photos from Zillow showing the backyard, which shows the top view shows the east property line in the background, which is where one section of the fencing will be. This bottom one shows obviously the driveway and the sidewalk. The fencing is proposed to go along that far edge of the side of the driveway and along the, of course, the inside section of the sidewalk. And we'll see this in plan view, but this is so you have actual eyeball view perspective and understanding of the project. And then this one shows then the space between the applicant's house on the left and their neighbors on the right. And the fence will be constructed back where the bushes are and end right about the end of where the bushes are or behind them. So this particular space in between here that we see is not where a fence is going, but it gives you an idea of the proximity of the neighbors. So here is our plan view. The garage is at the top, the house is at the bottom, and so the driveway I mentioned is at the top left here, and then it curves, turns and goes along the back of the sidewalk, and then turns near the rear corner of the house to rejoin the house there. There are two gates in there, one at the driveway and one at the sidewalk. And then on the other side, on the east boundary, there's also fencing on the property line over here, which then turns and rejoins the house at the back corner of the house there as well.
And there's a gate there.
And there's a gate there, sorry, thank you. So then the proposal is for a 4-foot fence, Gothic picket fence. And we see here we have spacing of 3 inches and the posts are 4x4 posts. The application included the fact that all this would be primed and painted. Yep. And I can go back to that for a second because that's easy enough. So we don't have it on here actually. So
In number 3, it says 1-inch gap, but they changed it to the 3-inch gap
yeah.
in the picture.
Right, there's a 3-inch gap there shown. So that would be the only other thing left, is to ensure that this wooden fence will be primed and painted or opaque stained.
It will be primed and painted. It'll be painted white.
Okay. And then we're ready with our Z&I report and the staff report.
Okay. Before we get to that, would you like to make any final comments on the application?
No, I think everything's included. Just looking forward to
Okay.
benefits.
Excuse me, as I recall from our the workshop, that in that one corner where the garage is, there was like a little bit of a jog, but that's going to go straight
It's
now,
just
correct?
going to, yes, be straight out and around.
Yeah,
They already
okay.
cut the bush, so.
I just wanted to make sure that was still the case. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any proponents or opponents of the application that received notice? Do you have comments? Anyone else who has comments on the project? Okay. Matt, would you like to proceed with
Sure.
the zoning report and staff findings?
Sure. For the zoning and inspections, the zoning inspector has indicated he has nothing to say about this, and the chief building inspector said it will not require a building permit. So then, for our staff report, we have, this is a project for Melanie Mugford at 316 Avenue C. The historic property name is the L.P. Taylor House from circa 1932, listed as a contributing structure. The National Register inventory description from 1988 describes the Lee P. Taylor purchased the lot on which this house was built in 1921, but the house does not appear on the 1931 Sanborn map. Taylor is listed as a trainman on the Norfolk and Southern Railroad in 1937. The one-story craftsman-influenced frame bungalow has a jerkin-beaded front gable and smaller side gables. Extending across the front is a hip porch with stubby columns on high-brick piers. The standing seam metal roofs have exposed rafter tails and triangular knee braces. An exterior chimney is located on the side of the house, and there is an enclosed rear porch. Window sash are 6/1. The house and its trim are covered with aluminum. And I just realized this is very tiny for everybody. So we're going to do that. At Sandbeck, there is no description. So the project for 316 Avenue C is to include a new 4-foot wood fencing in all AVCs. Staff submits the following historic design principles and standards, aka guidelines, that may be appropriate to this application. For fences and garden walls, 2.5.1, 2, and 3. For design principles, 3.1.1. For paint, 5.4.2, 3, and 4. And the statements of fact based on the information contained in the application are: 1, the structure is a contributing resource in the tight weave development pattern. The project is to include a new 4-foot wood fencing in all AVCs. Proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the Historic District Design Principles and Standards, aka guidelines. And 4, the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. And 5, the application is not incongruous with the guidelines. The HPC may want to consider the following conditions. 1, revised application documents according to the changes agreed upon at the hearing shall be submitted by the applicant to the HPC staff for approval according to the guidelines and prior to beginning installation of the project. That concludes our report.
All right, thank you. Any final comments?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments on the application?
A very simple request, 4 feet fence, 3-inch separation, 3-inch pickets, 1-inch separation, and in the appropriate height and appropriate zones.
Yeah, it's got this 3-inch spaces, the 3-inch space between the pickets, not 1 inch.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
3-inch.
Yes, 3-inch, yes, correct.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move to find the application for 316 Avenue C to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15411 to 15429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines or standards based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Fences and garden walls, 2.5.1, 2, and 3. Design principles, 3.1.1. Paint, 5.4.2, 3, and 4. And the only condition is that you do paint or stain as appropriate. And findings of fact, the structure is a contributing resource in the tight weave development pattern. The project is to include a new 4-foot wood fence in all AVCs. The proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the Historic District design principles and standards, also known as guidelines. The zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly, and the application is not incongruous with the guidelines.
I'll second.
I think we have a second. Any
I do, Mr. Chair,
any
I do-
discussion?
Yeah, I do have a bit of discussion. I just want to make sure that condition about the primed and painted makes it in there. I know the application didn't have it. I just want to make sure that that's covered.
Yes, he did. It is in the motion.
Okay.
All right, anything else? All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right,
I
motion
move we
approved.
issue a COA for 316 Avenue C.
All right.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. All right, COA is issued. Yes, ma'am.
And we'll want the written decision also?
Yes, written decision for this was in the package, in our packet.
Mr. Chair, I'm not certain that the written decision, the draft version that's before you, I don't think that incorporates the condition.
Okay.
So we may want to hold off on adopting that written decision.
Can we approve it with amendments based on the condition?
You could. I think the better practice would be to circulate it so
Okay.
that everyone has an
All
opportunity
right.
to see it.
All right. So that will come before us at the next meeting.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
yes.
I don't understand what happens now.
You will receive, well, Matt, you explain it as to...
Sure. So within the next few days, we'll receive the actual written COA. And then since the building inspections indicated there's no building permit necessary and the zoning also no zoning permit necessary, you would then be able to proceed.
Okay, so once I have the paper, I can proceed?
Yes.
Okay, and then do I have to do anything about the painting?
So you will need to send me an email that says that you will be painting or priming and painting, and then I will be able to actually sign off on that condition.
Okay, perfect. I already discussed it with them and they are doing it, so I'll
Yes.
send the email.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That's a good project.
Okay, next on our agenda is 311 Avenue C, and this is a demolition and,
Mr. Chairman, I thought we decided not to move that one.
That's the last one.
okay, all right. So we will do that one as the last one?
We would do 403 next.
Okay. 403 East Front Street will be our next application, our next hearing.
And Mr. Chair, before we get started, I just want to take a moment to draw everyone's attention to our rules of procedure. which set out some requirements and considerations for conflicts of interest. Generally, before each hearing, especially want projects that have received a great deal of consideration, perhaps a design review over several months. It's always good to touch base just to make sure that we're all bearing these rules in mind. As you all know, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and you all are quasi-judicial decision makers. Therefore, certain requirements are incumbent upon you, specifically those that pertain to issues of due process. It has come to my attention that there was an email circulated dated Tuesday, February 25th, 2025, at approximately 2300 hours, wherein one of the members here expressed some thoughts on the application that's getting ready to come before us, and we just need to make sure that that information is disclosed. I've asked Mr. Shelley to print copies of that email. I believe that that email may have already been disseminated to all of you, but that's something that we need to deal with on the record to unpack whether any of you may have a conflict of interest. And by conflict of interest, I mean if you have formed an opinion without hearing the evidence presented tonight and without hearing any information from the applicant, and have a fixed opinion about the application before the application is presented, or if you've had an ex parte communication that has not been disclosed. So in light of that information, I open it up for any of the members to share any information that they might need to disclose as it relates to this application, and to ask any further questions to determine if you all are in a position to be fair and impartial decision makers tonight.
I sent the email. I'm proud of what I said, but I'm prepared to give due consideration to any evidence that comes before us.
Okay, Mr. Parsons, I'm going to ask you a few additional questions. In light of the email that you sent that expresses some opinions about details of the application, are you saying tonight that you are able to set aside the comments that you mentioned that you're proud of and make your decision based solely on the information and evidence proffered in tonight's hearing?
I can't answer that.
Okay, that's a yes or a no question. It's very important before we can move forward. If you have any reservation or doubt in your mind, the answer to that question may be no. So I'll ask the question again. Are you in a position tonight to set aside your previous thoughts and opinions and make your decision about the application for 403 East Front Street based solely on the information and evidence proffered in the hearing tonight?
I believe that I can do that.
Do any of the other members have any questions or any concerns?
If you simply read a part of the email, is that a concern?
If you did not respond to the email, then that's fine. If the email, I guess I asked the question to everybody else on the board, are all of you able to set aside the information that may have been shared in the email that Mr. Parsons sent and make your decisions based solely on the evidence and information proffered in tonight's hearing?
Yes.
I think it's a fair question, yes.
Okay, so I have a yes from Mr. Morrison, a yes from Mr. Rush, a yes from Mr. Woinka.
Yes. In fact, when I saw that this was possibly a ex parte situation, I haven't even read the entire thing because I didn't think it was appropriate to this hearing.
Okay. In light of that information, I think the statutes require an inquiry from a representative from the applicant. Do you have any objection to any or all of the members of the HPC proceeding on the application in light of the disclosure of the ex parte communication?
And before you do that, I just want to note that I did read the email, which is probably ex parte communication. Did not respond. However, I did read it.
Thank you, sir.
Counselor, thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Mary Grady. Good to see everybody again. We do not object to the four gentlemen to my left participating. We do object to the author of the email participating. As we all know, the statute speaks in terms of a conflict of interest. If you express a fixed opinion that is not capable of being changed or open to being changed, I will quote from the closing passage of the email at issue. If the citizens were allowed to speak on this matter, they would be loud in favor of saving these parts of the building, but they can't speak because they don't have standing. It falls to us to do what they would have us do, what the guidelines call on us to do. This is where I stand. I cannot do otherwise. I respectfully submit that this is a textbook case of a fixed opinion that would violate my client's due process rights should Mr. Parsons be allowed to participate in the consideration of the matter tonight and in the final vote. Thank you. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
And Mr. Chair, in light of the applicant's objection, 160D 109 subsection E governs, and that subsection reads, it's captioned resolution of objection. If an objection is raised by a board member's participation at or prior to the hearing or vote on a particular matter, and that member does not recuse himself, the remaining members of the board shall by majority vote rule on the objection. So at this juncture, we have two options in light of Mr. Grady's objection. Mr. Parsons can recuse himself and be excused from voting on this matter, or a majority of the members can excuse Mr. Parsons from deliberating and voting on this matter.
All right, so we have two options. Commissioner Parsons, would you like to recuse yourself?
I defer to my colleagues.
Okay. So, would anyone like to make a motion to recuse?
I believe we should recuse Commissioner Parsons.
And can you?
I so move to
Okay.
recuse Commissioner Parsons.
And we typically state a reason for
The
recusal.
reason is a prior decision that he has expressed his opinion in a way that's not in line with the way we normally operate.
All right. So we have a motion to recuse. Do we have a second?
For discussion, I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? Any questions?
The rules that you've read seem fairly clear that the anyone who has voiced a fixed opinion prior to hearing the evidence seems to be not able to fully listen and weigh the evidence as presented, and so it pains me, but I think I'm going to have to vote for yes for the recusal.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we have a motion to recuse. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Parsons, the general way that we do this when someone is recused is to join the audience until the hearing is done.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
now that our quorum is no longer a quorum,
You have a quorum, sir.
is 4 a quorum?
No, sir. The quorum is established, is computed at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
And when the meeting commenced, you had 5 members. The subsequent recusal or excuse from voting on a particular matter does not affect the establishment of a quorum.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I suppose that means we can begin the proceedings.
Yes. Following along with the way that we normally conduct hearings, the AVC administrator provides an overview of the application.
Okay, so this is the application for 403 East Front Street, also known as the Shriners Temple site. Property owner is Craven County. And the applicant is David Griffin from Oakley Collier Architects. It has the description and the reference to the guidelines and also referenced materials, and is filled out with the signature of the designated authorized representative and dated. This is the Certificate of Appropriateness Owner's Authorization Form designating Mr. Griffith as the designated representative for the county. And it is signed and notarized. So we'll start first with the information provided by the State Historic Preservation Office, which describes the property shown here in its length. We will be reintroducing this later. So this entire 2 pages includes descriptions of the architecture of the building and its historic importance. Actually 3 pages, possibly 4, thanks. And that was provided by the Historic Preservation Specialist at the State Historic Preservation Office. So also entered into the record here is that the property is indeed indicated as a contributing resource in the historic district, and that's what this continuation sheet does, as well as this section of the, I forget what this is called, an amended item in the nomination here in blue, and this explains how it has been determined to be contributing, and here it does say at the bottom here, North Front Street, East Front Street, the E.S. Salamu Alakam Sudan Temple, circa 1951, as a contributing building. Then, in addition, it ends up in the bibliography, or I'm sorry, that's the bibliography for that. And then it also ends up in the report, the monthly report by the National Register for all new additions and changes to the National Register, and shows it was approved 12/28/2023. So next are photographs provided by the applicant. This being the Broad Street front of the building. Of particular note is relevant for later is the main front entry with its tower and onion dome, and various other architectural features on the front, including some of the keystones over the doors and windows. Another angled view looking up at that tower, and the actual doors. Then we have the side, or it turns out it was often the main entrance, and it was also fairly highly decorated as an entrance on the east side facing the river. You can see many of the windows are boarded up, one for security, but also due to damage from Hurricane Florence, which is also evident with this broken up portion of the wall. And then towards the back, also facing east, is this addition that was added much later, which is essentially garages. Then the west side is shown here in this photograph with the minaret here, which is actually a flue for the heating furnaces in this room here in the corner, and the white area represents essentially the overall mass of the auditorium that is inside this building. There is a bottom floor and then the second floor, the bottom floor is about 10 feet tall, and the rest is the height of the auditorium at its sides. And then here's a side view of that. And technically, the property includes this parking lot, which is currently was being leased by the county, but now is owned by the county. So when we get to it, this is the proposed redevelopment plan for this property. We can see the building is gone in almost its entirety, with the exception of that entranceway on Broad Street. We'll see that in a minute. Some of the iron fencing and along Broad and along East Front Street. And the other part of the proposal is to construct a new masonry wall with decorative pilasters and using salvage brick or matching brick that matches the existing Shriners Temple building. On the left here is just a floor plan of the existing county administration building, and they've indicated a future addition potentially off to the west. The rest of the site, of course, is shown here to be a parking lot, and there's no particular details at the moment about the materials or plantings at this time. We'll be discussing that later as well, possibly. So this is a view of that portion of the temple that would be retained in place, including the front steps that exist there now. The doors would be replaced since they're deteriorating with metal doors, but this is the original brick that currently exists would be cleaned. Currently, the top of this area does not have this piece on it, but this would be a piece that is rescued from the east-facing entrance because it's situated there and brought to rest on top of this portion of this wall to serve as a cap to the wall. We'll see in another view here something else. So I'm going to zoom in here a lot more. The construction here, it seems, will probably include some additional brickwork and structure behind this wall to make sure it remains structurally stable while it's freestanding. There may be, and there would be a cap on top of that as well. And so there's some details shown here. Then at the corner of the site where the current Shriners statue is, the statue and the flagpoles would remain, and this new, oops, looks like I have to go a little smaller. Yes. A new wall will be constructed behind it using the bricks or similar bricks from the temple itself, and it includes some details such as some of those keystones are shown in the two pilasters on the end, and two miniature onion domes on top of each one of those pilasters. Not sure if the benches are already there or not. They're existing, pre-existing. What this also shows a little bit in oblique is the iron fencing is projecting off from the pilasters off into the sunset, so to say, off to the background here on both sides. And we can see in the background is the parking lot and with trees So they do intend to put trees there at some point. And here we see a complete view of the entire thing, the entire proposal, sorry. So starting with, you can see the corner, and then going up Broad Street, we can see the distance to the entrance, preserved entrance, and see a little bit more about the plantings that they're expecting to do. All right. And I suppose maybe some street parking. I'm not sure if that's new or existing. So 2 weeks ago, I think after the meeting was postponed, I pointed out that our staff report indicated some missing information on that proposal, and so the applicants responded with these 6 items. We'll go over them later in more detail, but just briefly, one is about the door replacement with a metal door, the height of the new wall about 3 feet, the material of all the caps, keys, and domes will be white precast concrete, plantings will be selected later, and lighting later, and buffer and plantings later. So, let's see. And then actually normally I do the zoning and inspections first during this section. This is for 403 East Front Street project, and for the zoning administrator, he indicated a zoning permit is required for the redevelopment. And the chief building inspector said a building and floodplain development permits are required. And I think he missed the demolition permit as well. But he didn't say that. All right, and then I'm ready with my staff report whenever you are.
All right. Would the applicant like to present any other information?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. If we may, again, I'm the appointed county attorney for Craven County. I'd like to give you a brief overview of the information and testimony we'll present tonight. As you know, the legal background is somewhat straightforward. This is a 2-part process. We've got to get both the COA for the demolition and also present it with the redevelopment plan, as you've seen this evening. We believe the parking lot best suits the needs of the county and the downtown area. When you look at the statutes and the town's land use code, you see phrases like extreme hardship and deprivation of beneficial use or return in the context of what it may take to renovate an existing structure like the temple. We also see phrases like adaptive reuse in a sensible manner. We think that based on the testimony we'll present tonight, you'll see the extreme hardship, if not the lack of any economic viability toward renovating what's there now. And you'll also see the adaptive reuse of elements of the current building in our redevelopment plan. With that, I'm going to turn it over to David Griffin. He is our lead architect, and he's going to talk about the status of the building and what it would take to renovate it in place. Thank you.
Good evening. In looking at the existing structure with any project, there's certain limitations. For the county, it doesn't really meet their programmatic needs. Parking is a high demand. And then we even considered looking at salvaging or adaptive reuse on the structure. But with the lower level being in the floodplain, it's a 3-story load-bearing masonry structure. Raising it, moving it, not an option. And even for the county, the viability of trying to make it, they need office space. They don't need a grand ballroom. It's just, you've got a shell of a building that serves no purpose for the county. So there's not really we could spend $2,000 a square foot trying to adapt this and still does not solve their needs for downtown. As Eric said, parking is one of their highest demands. They've got obligations they need to meet for parking requirements. So the structure very much is impeding that option as far as parking. The pieces we're trying to salvage are somewhat iconic for the building. We've heard a variety of things through all our meetings. These are, I think, what are doable, practical, and viable. The salvaging of any other portion of that building, as we all know, other than the front facade, there's nothing to the back side of that building. It's one large, I guess it was a ballroom intended. It's on a second level. You've got elevators and stairs, and none of that meets current code. So that's not a real, it's just not a good viable option for adaptive reuse because it serves no purpose for the new owner. The best owner was the previous owner, and it no longer serves their purpose. I mean, they've chosen to leave the building somewhat as it is because it just doesn't function for them either. They had the same challenge. The cost of rehabilitation is extreme, and every project comes with a limitation, and finance is one of them. So that's really the, I guess, summary as far as the intent. The structure just is not worth the value to try to rehabilitate it for the county. To get it off.
Talk about the price per square foot of the courthouse and how that may compare to this building.
Yeah, good point. This is somewhat working downtown Bern. We just did a new expansion on the courthouse front. Your soils here are somewhat subjective. We spent a tremendous amount of money building one small addition down there because you have to do piles or helical piers down into the foundation to even support it on the soils here. So that structure existing now, if you would try to consider putting in a second floor in that large ballroom, I can't even get a foundation through and down to even support that floor. Because once I open it up, you're going to have soils that are most likely going to need driven piles or helical piers. So like I said, once again, there's a financial limitation that just doesn't work well for that structure now. Any questions?
Not at this point. We'll get to that. We'll get to that point.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Mr. Chair, we've got our facilities lead, Zach Chenoweth. He's going to talk about the redevelopment plan and what you will see once the building is hopefully demolished.
Good evening, Board. So the redevelopment plan would open up the ability to have this for our program needs. So for court facilities, we have to have parking. We have the courthouse adjacent to the property, and by statute, we have to have that ability for folks to come and do business at the courthouse. Also, this would open up the parking lot for business after hours. So for your downtown district, this opens up where I know parking is an issue for all of us downtown. And then the additional components of the building and the reuse of those components that are very important to the original structure, being able to use those back in this redevelopment. It's important for us. It's important for the downtown district. But at the same time, I think we've laid that out nicely in these renderings to show what we're willing to do.
Anything else?
Thank you. Last but certainly not least, we've got our Assistant County Manager, Gene Hodges. He's going to give you an overview of what I would call the bigger picture, what the county's obligations are vis-a-vis the court system, and what our fiduciary duties are to the taxpayer when it comes to things like renovating buildings.
As Aaron introduced me, I'm Gene Hodges. I'm the Assistant County Manager of Craven County. One of the key things that we are bound by state constitution is to provide court facilities in order to conduct the operations of the court. Part of that is to include adequate parking for visitors of the court facility. In a 12-month period, these are statistics I obtained from the court office. In a 12-month period, they had 22,000 criminal cases heard in that courtroom, in that courthouse. That does not take into account anything related to estates, anything related to probation court, or any other type of activities that occur inside that facility. That's $22,000 in a year's time, a 12-month period. The other thing that the clerk of court made sure that I noted is they also bring in over 200 citizens every month to serve on juries. They anticipate 75 people every week, 3 weeks out of a month. So 210 plus individuals coming in. Everybody's got to have a parking spot. So again, that is part of our constitutional mandate, is provide those court services, is provide facilities to give those court services to our citizens. The other item, just to point out, is our board takes an oath, along with our county manager, that we have a fiduciary relationship with the taxpayers to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money and not to spend it unwisely or in a manner that is not conducive to being good stewards of that money. That being the case, salvaging or trying to adaptive reuse, as we talked about, is going to be extremely cost prohibitive to the county, the citizens, the taxpayers, and ultimately result in a non-viable project that does not meet the needs of the county.
Mr. Chair, board members, that concludes our initial presentation. We're certainly available for questions and would like to be able to contribute as necessary as the meeting progresses. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any proponents or opponents who received notice of the hearing who would like to present evidence? And receiving notice means you should have received a letter in the mail being a property owner adjacent to this property. Are there others who can justify that they have relevant information that they will be directly affected by the application? Okay. Can you come up and state your name, and we will have to evaluate since you were not since you did not receive notice, we'll have to evaluate whether we think you have standing with this or not.
Right. Good evening. My name is Rhett Christopher Von Grumko. I've lived in New Bern since about 2012, but I've been coming here in regularity since about the year 2007 during the second wave of the war on terrorism. My family, my relatives served in both the United States Army in the state of North Carolina, and my relative through marriage of my sister served in the United States Marine Corps in the second wave of the war on terror. I believe that I'm pretty good at taking anthropological appraisal of trends in our society, and I've noticed since the year 2018, when Hurricane Florence hit, that something of a flag has gone up over Craven and Carteret County, resulting in exponential growth and development.
Can we, before he goes on with his testimony, can we establish that he has standing in this matter?
One thing that we require is any testimony, and this is for proponents and opponents who have standing as well as anyone else. You really need to be talking and making points related to specific guidelines. We appreciate, the background information,
right.
But any comments, any testimony by you or anyone else in the audience, it really needs to revolve around the guidelines.
I'll get right to the point, to the bottom paragraph.
And before we even get there, Mr. Chair, before this gentleman is permitted to offer evidence in support or opposition of this application, we need to verify that he has standing. So, sir, do you live or have a property interest in any property that might adjoin or abut the Sudan property?
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I was thinking in terms of cultural appropriation. So I consider myself to be a neighbor of all things Craven County.
Okay, so
And
you live in Craven County.
I am a cultural stakeholder. That's how I regard myself.
Okay, so you do not have a property interest adjoining or abutting the Sudan property.
I'm so sorry. No, I did not intend to deceive myself or the court by coming up.
Okay, do you have any evidence or any information to propose to suggest that you would experience a special damage unique to you that's not common to other people in Craven County that would be affected by this project?
Could you rephrase the question? I apologize.
Will you experience a special damage, meaning damages unique to you, not common to other citizens in Craven County, that will be affected as a result of this project?
No, I believe that there are many of us.
Okay.
That would actually feel damaged.
Unfortunately, the standing threshold by statute and by case law requires that if you don't have a property interest that will directly be impacted or otherwise demonstrate that you have some type of special damage that's unique to you, that's not common to other people, you do not have standing and do not have the legal right to offer evidence in this hearing, unless there's some other information that you have not provided that would bear on your standing.
I believe that the architecture and the structure itself, elements of it, it doesn't have to be the entire thing, are representative of our unity as a country.
Okay.
And I believe that I believe it to be a sacred space. And I believe it to be representative of that.
And I appreciate that, sir. However, in order to offer evidence in a quasi-judicial hearing, you have to have standing. And I'm not certain if we've heard any information from you that demonstrates standing. But this is a matter that the board will need to rule on.
Yeah, as I said, the first hurdle is, are you talking in terms of the guidelines, specific guidelines? I haven't heard that. Again, I think we all appreciate where you're coming from, but we're running a quasi-judicial hearing based on state statutes, based on city ordinances, and in North Carolina, preservation law is based on land use law, which is what Jamie was referencing as far as standing is concerned. So, based on that, commissioners?
Sir, may I make, I believe that the structure stands as a visual impression. So, property usage is not necessarily, it doesn't invite itself to one side or the other. For the argument that I'm presenting that the property is actually used in a visual way.
Mr. Chair, before we go too much further into this gentleman's testimony, I would encourage this board to rule on whether this gentleman has standing such that he might offer any evidence either as an expert witness or to the guidelines.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I move that he has no standing.
Okay.
I second the move.
All right. So we have a motion that this gentleman does not have standing for this particular hearing. We have a second. Any discussion? Any comments?
We appreciate the fact that you have opinions on this, and I think it's great you came to the meeting to express them. However, as the attorney said and as the chairman talked about as well, in order to participate, there's a very strictly defined set of conditions, and unfortunately you don't meet those, and so you're going to be, if we vote, we're going to be unable to make testimony in this matter.
I respect your decision. I have one question. Is there still a
okay? We need to process through.
There's a motion on the.
Yes, we need to process through the motion. Hang on just a minute. All right. So we have a motion and a second that there's no standing here and the testimony is not to be considered. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So the commission has rendered a decision. Would you like to make one? You were about to make a comment. Can you make one final quick comment, and then so we can move on?
Yeah. I feel that the New Bern Shrine Club historical structure must be preserved in some way. That's it.
All right. Thank you. All right, so moving on. Anyone else who can justify that they have relevant information? Okay. Matt, would you like to present staff findings and recommendations?
All right. Okay, this is our staff report for the applicants, Craven County and David Griffin at 403 East Front Street, the ES Selamu Alakam Sudan Temple, circa 1951, as a contributing structure. The project is to include almost complete demolition of the building, but retaining the primary Broad Street entryway and redevelopment with a parking lot. No longer salvage and relocation of the minaret. Improvements to the Shriners Memorial area and retention and minor on-site relocation of the historic iron fencing. The National Register New Bern Historic District inventory description was added as a contributing resource in 12/28/2023. Did not have a description at that time. The North Carolina Historic Preservation Office description, that letter that I had pointed out earlier, I'm going to pull out only the highlighted areas to save us from 4 pages of reading. The New Bern chapter of the Sudan Shriners was established in 1916 and was officially chartered the following year. The chapter grew quickly, welcoming members from across eastern North Carolina. In addition to their fraternal ceremonies and activities, the organization regularly raised funds for various charitable causes, including the Oxford Orphanage, the Masonic Home, the Shriners Widows Fund, and later the Shriners Hospitals for Children. The building derives its primary significance from its architecture. The temple is an example of the Moorish revival style, an exotic revival style evocative of Islamic and Middle Eastern architecture. The style rose to prominence during the late 18th and early 19th century as trade and contact with Asia and the Middle East increased. Like many exotic revival styles, the Moorish revival style experienced a resurgence during the 1920s and 1930s. The style was most popular for hotels, theaters, casinos, and garden structures. The Shriners, which were established in 1872, often selected the Moorish revival style for their temples as it reflected the organization's Middle Eastern influences. Most of the Moorish revival style temples date to the early 20th century, but some later temples like the ES Selamu Alakam Sudan Temple in New Bern continued to reflect hallmarks of the style. The ES Selamu Alakam Sudan Temple is architecturally significant as an intact vernacular example of the Moorish revival style in New Bern. Built in 1951, the temple blends the defining features of the Moorish revival style with the clean lines and simple geometric forms of mid-century architecture, resulting in a unique interpretation of the style. Designed by local Wilmington architect Burrett Stevens and his son Robert Stevens, the Sudan Temple features a large onion dome, horseshoe arches with decorative latticework, a stepped parapet, and a corner minaret, which are common characteristics of the Moorish revival style. Although the large banks of windows along the central tower are more indicative of modern influences, the latticework panes echo the ornamentation of the horseshoe arches and are reminiscent of the perforated screen walls found on more elaborate examples of the Moorish revival style. Likewise, the windows throughout the majority of the 1951 section of the building reference these lattice details, exhibiting 3-part metal sashes with triangular panes arranged in an X shape. Compared to other examples of the style, the Sudan Temple is relatively simple in its design. The building's simple geometric flat roof form, subdued ornamentation, and large banks of windows along the central tower and west block reflect the modern architectural styles popular during the mid-20th century. Interestingly, the temple also exhibits some features reminiscent of the Egyptian revival style, an exotic revival style popular during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The first story of the entry tower is sloped and angled, which is an architectural feature associated with the Egyptian Revival style. The battered brick entry surrounded with heavy angled architrave and a large central keystone echo the sloped form of the first story. A side entry along the east elevation of the building displays a nearly identical surround. Secondary entries along the facade also exhibit an angled architrave with a central keystone, but lack the battered bricks around. The window lintels along the facade and a portion of the east elevation of the main block feature angled splay jack arches with an oversized keystone mirroring the architraves above the entries. The Sudan Temple retains a high degree of architectural integrity. Despite damage during Hurricane Florence, the 1951 and 1956 sections of the building remain extant and relatively intact. The interiors appear to retain original materials, including historic wall and floor treatments, doors, and bathroom fixtures. The stage and collapsible bleachers in the auditorium also remain extant. However, since this was written, the bleachers have been removed. Overall, the interior and exterior of the E.S. Salamu Alakam Sudan Temple reflects its historic appearance with few material changes. Therefore, the Sudan Temple retains the character-defining features necessary to communicate its architectural significance as an intact vernacular example of the Moorish revival style in New Bern. The E.S. Salamu Alakam Sudan Temple's blend of exotic revival styles and modern design results in a distinct vernacular expression of the Moorish revival style that connects the Near Eastern influence of the Sudan Shriners with the architectural styles popular at the time of the building's construction. The temple is not only a unique example of its style, but is distinctive from the surrounding residences, commercial buildings, and institutional buildings found in the New Bern Historic District. The Sudan Temple also retains a high degree of integrity of location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. And it goes on from there, but we'll leave the rest of that out. So then the Sandbeck description, there is none. And so staff submits the following excerpts from the Historic District Principles and Design Standards, aka guidelines, are appropriate to this application. The process for which consists of 2 deliberations. First, demolition, and if the demolition is approved, then redevelopment. So deliberation 1 for demolition. Section 6.4, demolition of the guidelines, states the success of preservation depends on adaptive reuse of historic resources to meet current needs. Demolition is an irreversible action resulting in a permanent loss of the integrity and character of historic resources. Preparation of a demolition COA application should include a detailed report on the history of the structure and property from the State Historic Preservation Office. Just read that. Demolition of a contributing structure requires a 2-part COA where demolition is first considered and, if allowed, followed by consideration of the redevelopment plan. Demolition shall not proceed unless both parts of the COA are approved. If demolition is denied, the property owner is required to maintain the property and its structure to prevent demolition by neglect, and the HPC may deny the demolition of a structure or site if it is currently listed in the National Register of Historic Places, which it is. So, guidelines for demolition, 6.4.2, 3, 4, and 5. In addition, the guidelines stipulate in rendering a decision on demolition COA, the HPC should address the following 3 considerations. Consideration 1, address the historical, cultural, and architectural significance of the structure. So, is it a contributing structure? Staff submits that yes, the temple was added to the National Register inventory as a contributing resource on December 28, 2023. Second, is it significant because of its historic use, an event, a person, a builder, or an architect? Staff submits, according to the technical advice letter from the SHPO, dated December 22, 2023, not primarily. The letter states, although the E.S. Salamu Alakam Sudan Temple has strong connections to the social and fraternal history of New Bern and eastern North Carolina, the building derives its primary significance from its architecture. And thirdly, Is it the last or oldest example of a certain building type? And staff submits, it depends. It could be the only one of this type. According to the technical advice letter from SHPO dated December 22, 2023, the building is primarily a Moorish revival style building designed at the end of the period for the style designated or designed with modern and Egyptian revival style features. While mentioning other earlier Moorish revival style buildings, the letter does not mention any that are a combination of these styles, making it possibly the only such building in the world. The letter concludes the description of the building with, yes, Salamu Alaikum Sudan Temple's blend of exotic revival styles and modern design results in a distinct vernacular expression of the Moorish revival style that connects the Near Eastern influences of the Sudan Shriners with the architectural styles popular at the time of the building's construction. The temple is not only a unique example of its style, but is distinctive from the surrounding residences, commercial buildings, and institutional buildings found in the New Bern Historic District. The Sudan Temple also retains a high degree of integrity of location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. So it is possibly the only one of its kind. It is distinctive in New Bern and still retains its historic integrity. So consideration 2, address the integrity of the structure. What are the conditions of foundations, floors, walls, windows, doors, and roofs? Staff submits, staffs accompanied the several tours of the building since the flooding from Florence. There are very few apparent concerning conditions of foundations, floors, windows, doors, and roofs. The apparent damages are either isolated minor cases caused by water intrusion or superficial damage from vandalism. The retractable seating units in the auditorium have been removed by the new owners. Secondly, is it a hazard to public health, safety, and welfare? Staff submits a report from the chief building inspector is pending. It seems since the new owners have taken possession of and secured the site, the vandalism has ceased. Consideration 3, address attempted preservation efforts. So have options for rehabilitation been explored with preservation organizations? The applicants have stated they have looked at rehabilitation and reuse of the building and are not interested in this. The applicants have indicated they have explored options for rehabilitation with preservation organizations. The applicants are proposing to retain the main entry on Broad Street, the brick pavers, statue and flagpoles on the corner at the roundabout, no longer the minaret, and relocating the wrought iron fencing from the 19th century Old Nelson House that was also the Shriners' original old temple home. If possible, some of the bricks will be used to create a short wall at the statue, and a few architectural elements will be mounted in the wall. Second, has the applicant been unsuccessful in seeking alternatives to demolition? Staff submits the applicants have stated they have looked at alternatives to demolition and are not interested in this. In the design review meetings, HPC has suggested various options for retaining important parts of the building. Some of these suggestions are in the proposal. Thirdly, have alternatives for structure relocation and sale of the property been pursued? Staff submits this structure is far too large and massive for relocation, therefore this is not a viable consideration. The applicant has stated they will offer for others to salvage parts. And I will add they have gotten some responses from some people for small parts of the project. So statements of fact based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: 1, the project is a proposal in the waterfront development pattern to demolish one contributing structure in the National Register Historic District and in the New Bern Local Historic District. 2, despite the flooding of Hurricane Florence in 2018 and subsequent vacancy, the SHPO has indicated the Sudan Temple retains a high degree of architectural integrity. 3, the building poses many prominent architectural features that make it a unique combination of the Moorish Revival architectural style with modern and Egyptian Revival features. 4, preservation of significant architectural elements of the building would preserve some of the unique features of the building. 5, preserving parts of the building would honor the history of the contributions of the Shriners with and for the New Bern community and their mission beyond New Bern. 6, preserving parts of the building provide a physical presence and opportunity to trigger memories and stories of the work and experiences of the New Bern Shriners. So here's an example in Durham, a historic warehouse and local grill, where the facade was retained and a new development was built behind it. 7, preservation and reuse of any of the existing building must consider the entire footprint of the existing building is in the AE flood hazard zone. Therefore, the entire first floor area of any preserved portions of the existing building can only be used for storage, parking, or access to the upper floors. 8, the proposed redevelopment for the site will need to be approved by the HPC in deliberation 2 before a COA and a construction permit may be issued. And 9, the zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. And so the HPC shall deliberate on this first segment of the process before proceeding to deliberation 2. So I will hold off our staff report until then.
All right, thank you. Would the applicant like to make any final comments before the commission takes this on?
I think we're okay for right now.
All right, thank you. All right, commissioners, comments, questions?
I do have a question, and it's really more on process. Is that, as I understand in reading the rules procedures, this is a two-part, and actually two different hearings. Today we're looking at demolition, and provided there is an affirmative on that, then the next hearing at some point will be on the new redevelopment. But the demolition will be held until the approval of that development plan. Is that correct?
That was the intent of the rules of procedure as we put them together.
Right. So if that redevelopment plan never gets approved, then the demolition can never occur.
That is correct.
And it might be a month, 2 months before that's held, and the demolition permit is just held until the development plan is
Although Commissioner Wojcicki would point out that the deliberation on the redevelopment can occur the very same evening.
Yeah.
Say it again, please.
The deliberation on the redevelopment can occur the very same evening.
It can so we can approve the redevelopment and that? I thought it had to be two separate hearings.
It is.
Two separate hearings on the same day?
Yes.
All right. That was my question.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
I mean, technically it's the same hearing. It's just two parts of the same hearing.
I see.
The intent of what we put together procedurally back in 2016 was it's two pieces.
Sure.
There's demolition, and you consider only the demolition, not what's going back. Does demolition stand on its own?
Mm-hmm.
Assuming the demolition is approved, then you deal with the redevelopment. And the intent behind saying you can't do the demolition until redevelopment is approved was to prevent basically empty lots where someone would come in and demolish, and then we're stuck with an empty lot and they may never build anything back. So
Fair enough.
that was the intent.
Just wanted to be clear on that.
Okay, so looking at the guidelines. Condition 1, is it contributing? Yes. When we hear the long article from SHPO, there's nothing clearly there saying it's the last or the oldest. There were a lot of perhaps and could be. And one thing, if this was so important, the previous owner had the opportunity to seek statewide significance for this building, as had the city the opportunity to seek statewide significance, in which case demolition would be very difficult. So none of those steps occurred, and I think it's important to know that this is not the owner that abandoned the building after the flood. This was a buyer. And so in some ways, the original owner sought to move on and get a new purchaser who could perhaps either use or change the use of the building or perhaps look for demolition. SHPO never visited, is that correct? So all this was done based upon notes from a previous visit by someone else.
So SHPO, the restoration specialist, was here while the prior owners owned it and toured the building then.
After we did?
After Florence, yes.
No, after when
Oh,
we...
after the HPC,
After
no.
we requested the letter.
That's correct.
No, it
And
did
the
not.
author of the document, I don't know what all resources she depended on,
But
potentially
that person
including.
did not come
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Just wanted to make sure. Because that's what she states in the record.
Right.
She did not visit. The conditions of the foundations, walls, windows, doors, roofs, the bottom had complete flood incursion. We all visited that. We had to wear masks, et cetera. And it's encouraging that they did board up the windows, so there was some prevention of health hazards and rodents and vagrants. But if this was a smaller building, as we've done elsewhere, we would typically say, let's elevate it, and we would improve that. As you pointed out, it's not feasible to elevate this building. So what we normally would do is not an option here for either the buyer or...
We won't be elevating any buildings downtown either. So there's alternatives to elevation with regard to flooding.
But we have elevated some buildings, correct?
I mean, in the commercial downtown.
And are those alternatives just non-use on the first floor, converting first floor to storage or parking?
That is one alternative, but not always.
But the guidelines don't address whether it's commercial or not.
There's called dry flood proofing and wet flood proofing.
Yeah. And then options for rehab. The owner, as I said, sold it. And I just have to ask, have there been other people seeking to buy the property from you?
No, sir.
Okay.
For purposes of the record, the response to that question was no.
The guidelines call for demolition for infill. It's not really an infill. It's a change of use, perhaps. You've done the photos and documents that are required. I believe you've contacted the preservation organizations to take what they will take. So it just seems to me to be a project that is not going to fit neatly with any of our guidelines. But to me, the preponderance of the evidence in reading the guidelines and what they've presented and what I observed would say that demolition is called for.
Chairman Rush, sorry, Commissioner Rush, any comments?
I agree with what he just said. And the building was for sale. The previous owner did not want to do anything with it. He wanted to sell it. And it was in the open market. Anybody could have bought it, saved it. We've been working on this for how long?
A year.
A year. So there's been lots of revisions. The county has listened to our requests, considered our requests, and made adjustments to our request, and are really trying to come up with a win-win situation. It's very disheartening to tear any building down, especially one that's been here for so long. But we all toured that building, and I actually got sick when I went in it. I actually had to leave. And I toured it 2 floors. It's not salvageable. It's not safe. You can't save it. The use is, no one's come up with a use for it. So I'm in agreement with Jim said that we need to find a better use for the property and move forward. Parking lot is maybe not everyone's best use, but that's what the county needs, I understand. And they are trying to make it as attractive and with landscaping and other features that reflect the temple. And I think it's time to make a vote and decide what we want to do.
Mr. Chair, I've got a couple of comments.
Please.
The A couple of notes, and I know that we want to talk about considerations, but the thoughts, the testimony that it doesn't meet the county needs, I don't find that very persuasive. And I also don't find very persuasive that it's going to be an expensive project. I don't know that the expense, I don't think that the county would fall under some of the hardship provisions that are within our standards. What I do find more persuasive is the inability to complete adaptive reuse of that structure. The idea that the first floor would be unusable space, that it would have to be parking or storage or some alternative. I think jacking it up, elevating it probably is not a good option. The requirement of pilings and not meeting code on stairways and hallways and elevators, I think that all goes to that adaptive reuse, and so I think that is persuasive. Something else I find persuasive, and something that has come up before, is the building itself. Most of the building, the whole back of it, is really very nondescript and very much not. It's really that front portion that really is the significant portion. And while I think it's important for the city and for the county to recognize the importance of that structure and the Shriners who were there and built it and who did some great things there, it really is not that whole building. And I think something that recognizes the building that was there, the building that the Shriners, and recognizes all of that, you can do that in such a way without retaining the whole structure. I also find, and I know we've talked about it before, about taking portions of the building, the structure, and moving it to other places. I don't find that to be particularly great either. I think you really need to use that location to recognize the significance. So for those reasons and some of what the other commissioners say, I'm leaning towards demolition as well, with a proper development plan, of course.
Well, I guess it's my turn. The HBC has been working through this for a number of months with the applicant. In fact, I remember, I think it was one of the very first meetings I commented to David at the design review. I said, you realize it's going to take several swings for us to get there. So we've been swinging away for a number of months to try to get there. Looking at the considerations, this is just one of these situations. I've been on the HBC for a number of years. I was chairman for 4 years. This is just one of these situations that is certainly an outlier. Dealing with a massive structure like this in a floodplain, this just does not happen very often. So it's a fairly unique situation. Although it is listed as a contributing structure, I question whether it represents what we typically consider New Bern's historic character. I think it's a perfect example of why we have guidelines to start with, because a significant 19th century Victorian structure was demolished in order to put something in place that really doesn't fit with what we think of as New Bern's historic character. And yes, it's been there 70 years, and it's just it's very difficult for this body trying to do preservation to try to approve demolition of something like this. I've been in the structure as well. The use and the purpose of the structure, I agree, does not really fit for what the applicant is proposing as far as what they need for that structure. I know it's very hard to do adaptive reuse of a massive structure like this with a completely different use and purpose. And being in a floodplain makes it even more complicated. This is Moorish revival style. Well, we typically think in terms of New Bern's historic character. We think in terms of Georgian, Federal, Greek revival, Victorian and Queen Anne, Craftsman, Colonial revival, mid-century modern. This really doesn't fit with what I consider, New Bern's typical historic character. If the HBC was around back in the 50s, I would be willing to bet that the Shriners Temple would have never been built. So yes, it's looking at the considerations. To me, the biggest thing is the integrity of the structure. I think it was what David said concerning, even trying to add floors and make modifications to that building. I live just around the corner from the county courthouse, and I walk by there almost every day, and I've observed the amount of work and extra structural support that they've had to do to that building. I can see I understand the same situation with the Shriners building. So it's it's like I said, it's been there for 70 years, but it's what can we do with this to do an adaptive reuse? It's just I don't see how you can do it in the floodplain. Just because it's in the floodplain, you've immediately got one entire level that you can't do anything with. So what do you do at that point?
Mr. Chairman, I move we find the application for 403 Front Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance section. Demolition application for 403 South Front Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance section 15411 to 15429. New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. The Commission considered: Number one, the historic, cultural, and architectural significance of the structure, and did not find a preponderance of significant evidence to retain the building. Consideration two, the integrity of the structure. The building is still standing, has issues after flooding, but again, the Commission did not find the integrity of the structure to be sufficient to continue its use. The Commission considered attempted preservation efforts, and the applicants have stated that they have been successful in some cases finding other uses for pieces, parts, and items in the building, and that they have not been successful in seeking alternatives to demolition nor a different buyer. Findings of fact: the project is in the waterfront development pattern to develop one contributing structure in the National Historic Register District and the New Bern Local Historic District. I think I've covered most of these that are listed on the recommendation.
Number 9, perhaps.
I'm just looking through. Okay, and the zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly.
I'll second.
All right, so we have...
Are there any suggested amendments to that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I might suggest you at least add the finding of fact that it is not incongruous, that one.
I think he
to
did.
demolish the
Okay,
building.
they didn't at the beginning motion. but-
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I missed that.
All right, so we have a motion to demolish. We have a second. Any comments or questions from the commission on the motion? Okay, no comments or questions. So, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So, motion to demolish is approved. Now, there is no COA that's issued at this point. This is done once a redevelopment plan is approved. So, shall we move to redevelopment?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back to our procedural matters. Matt, I believe you provided a little bit of overview of the redevelopment. Is there anything else that you want to do with this?
Now we'll continue with my staff report at deliberation 2 for redevelopment. The current proposal for redevelopment is a concept plan. Some of the details were added to the application in an email on February 21st. I mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting. We'll go through that a little bit more carefully now. The door replacement will be a metal door painted the same color as the existing painted door, style to match as close as possible. This should prevent in future wood rot possibility. 2, the height of the new wall will be approximately 3 feet in height. The final height may vary depending on the construction method and detail. 3, the material for
I'm sorry, Matt. What new wall was this?
That's the wall behind the statue.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry. Or at least that's how I understand it. Yes. Okay. 3, the material for all of the caps, keys, and domes will be a white precast concrete material. This is similar to the material on the original building. 4, plantings will be selected from the current zoning and planning guidelines for the jurisdiction. Final plant selection will be part of the new civil design. We will consider any suggestions that are acceptable to the city zoning and planting department. Or did you mean planning, maybe? Planning. Yeah, okay. HPC staff comment is the planting shall also comply with the requirements of the Historic District Design Principles and Standards, the guidelines. Number 5, lighting will be designed to comply with the current zoning and planning guidelines for the jurisdiction. Final fixture selection and lighting levels will be part of the new civil design package. We will consider any suggestions that are acceptable to the city zoning and planning department. Our comment, the lighting, including the fixtures and the color of the light emitted, shall also comply with the requirements of the Historic Design Principles and Standards. And the same thing happens with buffer and plantings. So what that leaves you with is the details of the redevelopment remaining to be specified are the plantings around and in the parking lot lighting design and lamping, and also the treatment along the northern edge of the property, along the neighboring homes and such back there. The design of these items could be difficult to enforce if not specifically approved. So some of these issues and other issues that arise, but perhaps not all of them, can be handled in the conditions of an approval. But the applicant has not yet clearly proposed some of these. Staff recommends the HPC continue this hearing to allow for discussion of these elements and issues with the applicant in more detail at a design review meeting. Once Commission is determined it is ready to proceed with the deliberation, staff submits the following historic district guidelines are appropriate to this portion of the application based on the plans and descriptions provided at the time of the preparation of these recommendations. So, points of HPC policy. The policies and rules of procedure adapted by the HPC for evaluating a redevelopment plan include only 2 sentences. Any new construction proposed for the site will be evaluated based on historic guidelines for infill construction. And the second sentence is a redevelopment plan must include the following items as conditions for approval of the redevelopment plan. A review and preliminary approval by the chief building inspector, which we've seen. And second, a reasonable time frame for completion of redevelopment, which maybe we haven't heard yet. The chief building inspector and zoning administrator have reviewed the proposed sketches and have commented accordingly. And just stated timeline for completion of the project has not yet been proposed. So staff submits the following historic district principles and design standards that may be appropriate to this application. Landscaping, 2.4.3, 4, 7, and 8. Fences and garden walls, 2.5.1, 2, 3, and 5. For parking, 2.7.3 and 5. For signage, 2.8.1 and 4. For masonry, 5.1.1, 2, and 5. For metals, 5.3.1, 3, and 4. For paint, 5.4.2, 3, and 4. And contemporary materials, 5.5.1, 2, and 3. The statements of fact, based on the information contained in the application, are: 1, the proposed redevelopment is located in the waterfront development pattern. 2, the project is for almost complete demolition of the building, but retaining several historic elements, improvements to the Shriners Memorial area, and expansion of the existing parking lot. 3, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the historic district principles and standards. 4, a significant number of details and materials still need further information from the applicant. 5, the zoning administrator and the chief building inspector have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. And 6, the application is or is not congruous with the guidelines, as you may discuss here in a few minutes. The HPC may want to consider the following conditions: that 1, revised plans according to the changes agreed upon at the hearing shall be submitted by the applicant to the HPC at a subsequent hearing for approval according to the guidelines and prior to the final inspection by the Building Inspections Division. The HPC shall deliberate on this segment of the process and make a motion and decision on the redevelopment before making a separate motion and decision on issuing one COA for both decisions. That's the end of our report.
All right. Would the applicant like to make any comments on the redevelopment?
I think most of our comments were covered in the prior presentation. We're glad to make them again since this is a second hearing, but we would also be perfectly fine with y'all accepting what we've already presented previously.
I'm okay with that, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any proponents or opponents who received notice of the hearing who would like to present evidence? Okay. Are there others who can justify that they have standing who would like to present evidence? All right. Matt, you have presented the staff's findings and recommendations. So I'm going to make the assumption that the applicant doesn't have any other comments at this point. All right, commissioners, comments, questions?
One thing I'd like clarified is that it's an historic fence, so if it doesn't meet the 4 feet of the separations, we're not concerned about that.
That's
we want
right.
the historic fence to be
Well, and it's pre-existing.
right, but the guideline that we're quoting does have that.
Oh, okay, right.
So a question I have is the landscaping and lighting plans will be presented at a later time for approval of conditions?
You can make it a condition if the majority of the board members would like for a lighting and or landscape plan to come back to you all.
And I do think that's been a fairly typical plan of how we do bigger projects where the lighting landscaping can come along for the administrator to review. If he doesn't like it, he can bring it to the HPC.
Hey, Matt, does the city building inspector look at lighting plans for parking lots?
I don't know. I don't think so.
So the lighting plan is an HPC for parking lots within the historic people or ones that are constructed.
So most often lighting plans are there to demonstrate how much light is being projected where.
Sure.
Most lighting plans some do and some don't include depictions of the actual poles and foundations and such. Until it gets into construction documents, obviously that do then, of course. But at this stage, Oftentimes, it's relegated just to the lamp head, if at all. But it is your purview to review the design of the light standards, the poles, their foundations, and the lamp heads according to the guidelines.
I'm sorry.
And then the only other thing is that the light emitted is supposed to make sure that it's white light, which
Sure.
is
And I'm
obviously
sure that-
something that I can do.
And I'm sure you want to have to stay on site and not bleed over into the neighboring properties.
Well, no, we don't have HPC standards for that, and I don't even know if the city has
I seem to
standards for
recall
that or
there's
not.
some kind of lighting and Unicode lighting ordinance about.
We certainly regulate lighting on public streets and right-of-ways, but I think we have our Assistant Director of Development Services here. I don't know if he would know right offhand if we have a lighting requirement for private property or individual parcels that are not a part of the public right-of-way.
And he has been sworn in, right?
Good evening, Board. So for lighting and such as bleed over into adjacent properties and things that might be a nuisance, that would be the purview of our nuisance abatement as well as HPC enforcement. We do review things such as lighting that do come into play. However, our lighting standards do not include that. It is, however, covered as a nuisance, so that could be enforced.
So, but that's kind of an after-the-fact nuisance. It's not.
Correct, and that feedback could be presented to the county when they do present those designs, that this should not bleed into adjacent properties causing a nuisance, and if it does, then we would enforce that.
While you're up, I have another question about. When on the designs for parking lots, where there are islands of green or different, is that something that the planning department or the development services department takes a look at when plans come in, or is that an HPC type of thing?
Due to its nature in the HPC, the HPC administrator would likely take lead.
Okay.
We do have our own parking standards as well. Anything on top of those standards that the HPC might have would prevail.
Would the underlying statute or standards be the cities that the HPC would lie on top of, or
Correct.
Okay. So there is a requirement to follow the city
Correct.
standards for parking lot layout, ingress, egress, how many spots, how much green, that kind of thing?
Correct.
Okay.
And then you only have the landscaping ones that I've mentioned here on the screen at the moment.
Say that again?
You guys regulate the types of plants and such, not necessarily the layout.
Correct. I get it.
Just to clarify for you.
Now, in other things, Jim, you had mentioned that in other projects, the commission has given that responsibility to the administrator to do, unless the administrator finds that there are things that need to come to our attention.
And it lets us use the city's expertise for things we're not as versed on, perhaps. Let them review it and come back to us.
You're not a parking lot expert?
No.
Well,
Mr. Morrison, it's important to highlight the fact that lighting installation and landscaping are both on the minor works list.
About what?
Are both on the minor works list.
Okay.
I'm just concerned because this is such a significant property. It's almost like the threshold to downtown New Bern. It's one of the corridors. It's right there on the corner.
Yeah.
And I think we should hold the lighting and the landscaping to a higher degree if we can, because it's just going to make a significant impact on the community. And green space and lighting can enhance the area and be used by the public and enjoy it if it's a very nice landscape plan.
Even
not just a basic,
even the poles, what they look like, and the
not
heads
just
and
a
things.
basic parking lot landscape. So I'd like to hold it to the highest standard, and that's why I'd like it to come back to HPC so that we can have input on that.
And that's one of the compelling things I see in the staff findings is that we have conceptual layout drawings, but not a whole lot of detail, and just, trying to be consistent with the way that we typically process through these things. We need a level of detail that I don't think we have yet. I did not see it in the package. And I think that's kind of what you guys are talking about and around. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, I'd like to see more details.
All right. Does the applicant or members here, any comments on that?
One quick question. As we move to design on the site, the higher level of standard, and the zoning has got specific language in their video and zoning. Is there something in the HPC guidelines we're calling the higher level of standard? When I turn to Engineer Solutions Landscape Architect, they're going to ask me, what is the benchmark?
We have these 4 guidelines that are listed in the report.
Mr. Chairman and Board, if I'm understanding the process going forward, certainly we respect the Board's interest in the landscaping and the lighting plans and the details. If there's a possibility of approving, I think we had mentioned earlier, approving the redevelopment plan subject to those elements coming back to the Board. My impression is all those will have to be wrapped into some of the specific zoning requirements, a more detailed site plan, if you will. If we could do that, I think we would be pretty comfortable with the posture moving forward.
I guess I'm wondering, could we have a condition that the applicant came back for an amendment to the COA detailing landscaping, lighting? And do you have an answer for the north boundary? I know we briefly talked about that one time, what you were going to do.
Our issue with that boundary is who owns it. We still have that issue. We're not
There's
sure.
A fence there right now.
And I think part of a wall, we're not sure if that's ours or if it belongs to the neighbors on New Street. But yes, I think COA with some conditions, with the direction that we would amend it to provide that detail. I think that gets us to the exact same place that I'm proposing. So,
because we do have the ability to amend COAs that have been issued.
That's correct. Council, how do we feel about that?
That's perfectly consistent with our rules, regulations, and guidelines.
Okay.
Well, let's give it a try. Mr. Chairman, I move to find the application for redevelopment of 403 East Front Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15411 to 15429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines and standards based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Guidelines are landscaping, fences and 2.4.3, 4, 7, and 8. Fences and garden walls, 2.5.1, 2, 3, and 5, with the exception of height on the historic fence. Parking, 2.7.3 and 5. Signage, 2.8.1 and 4. Masonry, 5.1.1, 2, and 5. Metals, 5.3.13 and 4. Paint, 5.4.2, 3, and 4. Contemporary materials, 5.5.1, 2, and 3. Findings of fact, the proposed development is located in a waterfront development pattern. The project is for almost complete demolition of the existing building, but retaining several historic elements, improvements to the Shriners Memorial area, and expansion of the existing parking lot. 3, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the Historic District guidelines and design standards. Number 4, a significant number of details and materials need further information from the applicant that can be dealt with as an amendment to this COA. And the zoning administrator and the chief building inspector have reviewed this project and the application is not incongruous with the guidelines. The condition would be that the applicant will return to a hearing with a proposed amendment detailing landscaping and lighting, and if feasible, addressing the solution of the northern property line. And then also, do you have a timeline for completion? That's one of our requirements. Maybe have that in the amendment as well.
I'll second. Does that cover everything, Mr. Chair?
I think so, unless staff.
Does that cover everything, Matt?
Yep.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any questions, comments, discussion on the motion?
We appreciate all your hard work. Thank you.
I do have a question. So that submittal for landscaping and lighting in that north property line, that will go to you, Matt, for evaluation, or will just come back here as an amendment?
Hearing.
The motion on the floor is for it to come back to the full board.
Okay.
And amendments typically do.
Okay. And okay. There's no time certain on that. It's just whenever it is.
COAs, if one is issued tonight, are good for a year.
Okay. Right.
It can be extended, but the expectation would be that the applicant would come back as soon as practicable.
Good to know.
Okay, anything else? All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Everyone understands what the motion is? No questions on that? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried. All right, so we have approved demolition. We have approved a development plan. So we need a motion to issue, correct? To issue the demolition as well as the redevelopment plan. The COA for that.
I make a motion that we do a COA of the demolition and the development plan.
With the condition?
With the condition stated of landscaping and lighting.
The amendment. Yeah.
And the amendment, yeah.
I'll second.
All right. Any questions, comments? Everyone understands what we're doing here. Okay, so all in favor of issuing the COA for demolition and redevelopment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay.
As a side, and I'm sure it was out of order, but it would have been good to have heard Richard's opinions on this. I would have enjoyed hearing what it was. I think that's just an unfortunate.
Well, it's not right.
I'm not disagreeing.
Okay, so we are down to the last but not least application for the night, which is 311 Avenue C. Matt, would you like, and we do have the applicant here, yes? Okay, so Matt, would you like to provide an overview of the project?
Sure. Here we go. All right, here is the application for the project at 311 Avenue C. Property owner is Wanda Davis, and the applicant's name is Opportunities Industrialization Center, Inc. They are also the owner's authorized representative. See in a minute. Here we have a description of work. It's demolition and new construction, and the several of the guidelines, and also to refer to the plans for the materials. So they've provided photographs, and they're acting on behalf of the owner, and this is the signature and date for the authorized representative, and this is the form for that. Opportunities Industrialization Center, Inc. And Ms. Davis's signature and notarized signature. So, one of the first things we need to do for this is clarify the date of construction and whether or not that affects its standing as a contributing resource, which is in the National Register, essentially to clarify if the National Register list is correct or not. So I found that the 1924 Sanborn map shows a house on that site, and you see it circled here in red. But note that it indicates that it is a two-story structure with a porch on the front, relatively small building, especially compared to the other one on the corner, with a small rear wing on the back and a small side porch in that little elbow spot, the inside elbow. And that's here shown here, plus the 0 that's there indicates that it is a slate or tin roof. The D represents its dwelling, and then the addition on the back is a one-story addition with a slate or tin roof. Then, in the 1958 revision to the 1931 map, shows in 1958 the house is still 2 stories with a one-story porch on the front, a one-story addition on the back, essentially the same, appears to be the same building. However, the 1988 Riverside National Register Historic District inventory indicates the house at 311 C Street was built circa 1920. It did declare it to be non-contributing because, but it also indicated it's a one-story frame, gable-roofed house with asbestos siding, replacement front porch with concrete deck and wrought iron columns. And here we see a picture of it. It's not 2 stories, it's 1 story. Was it changed from 2 stories to 1 story? Would that have been significant enough of a change to have made it no longer contributing, as it might have been if it were built in 1920? But I think the non-contributing status here may be attributed to the fact that it has asbestos siding and replacement front porch with these wrought iron columns. The Craven County information indicates that it was built in 1940, which we can see that was wrong, since in 1958 it was still the old house. So that's some of the information that we'll have to establish when we get to the discussion. But it seems that this building remains non-contributing as according to the inventory, despite the fact that its construction date is wildly wrong, or seems to be wildly wrong. All right, so now we'll move to photographs provided by the applicant. So this is the house today, or at least in 5/22/2023. And side, more of an oblique view here. And from the other side. And here from more of the front and the sidewalk area, front yard area, standing back a bit, straight on from the front. They also provided some evidence of the damage that was done or existed in 2023 with relative to its foundation. Some of it looks like leaning out. I'm going to go smaller here. That was drastic. Here, over a doorway frame, there's a crack in the wall here. The floor is separating below the doorway here, creating a gap. And there's even plants growing in through the wall. The door has a gap at the top near the hinge, indicating some racking of the building. The corners of the walls are also shifting relative to each other. There's another crack here below this window. Not sure what that's showing us. Maybe this little tipping of this portion of the wall tipping out. And another shot of the front, the side. This finally is, I think, the one shot of the back of the house. And here you can see that this addition is much longer than was indicated in the Sanborn maps. Okay, so they also provided an elevation certificate because it is in the floodplain, and any new construction would need to be built with the first floor and or any insulation or mechanical ductwork above the base flood elevation plus the 2-foot freeboard. And so the second page is the one that shows us what they're proposing. So they're proposing that the top of the bottom floor, so the first floor of their proposed building will be at 12 feet above sea level, NAVD 1988. And then also of interest to us is what that means in terms of how far above ground it is. The lowest adjacent grade next to the building is 8.5 feet above sea level, so that's 1.5 feet, 3.5 feet of distance, the highest bit being 9.1 feet above sea level. All right, and this is their proposed site plan with setbacks of 12 feet and 25 feet to the ramp, let alone the house, 54 feet to the rear, and 24.3 feet to the front. For the historic district, those side yards are 5 feet, the rear is 6, and the front setback is based on the range of what the other houses are on the block, which happen to be 16.5 feet is the closest one, and 24.5 feet is the farthest one. So at least the front edge of the steps are at the within the correct distance. However, it should be measured to the building. So the actual building will need to move forward a little bit. This is a rendition of what the house design will look like, or is proposed to be, sorry. Make it a little bit smaller. There we go. With a front porch on the left, a gable on the right wing, and then the entire house has a gable roof.
Does that show the proper elevation? Is that
yes,
to scale?
Yes, this has been corrected. Yep. So, and so now we also see the roof plan here. It's hard to see, but the porch is this portion here with the hip on the edge here, and you can hardly see the valley for for that front gable on that front portion. And you can't hardly see the ridge for the actual roof itself. It could be the resolution of our computers here. So then this is a plan, if we need to refer to that. One of the things to note is that there is a back stairway here, which we'll see also in a minute with the elevations. All right. So here we have on the left is then the side elevation, which would be the left elevation. And so the front steps are on the right, and the porch, front porch, and then the rear porch is here on the left. This door is a storage door behind the steps. You can see vertical windows. This is a hip roof on this projection here. We have brick veneer foundation. We have a water table drip cap or skirt board that is 8-inch wide. The other trim is shown here. Let me make it bigger because I can't even read it. There we go. So the corner boards are 4 inches wide. It is lap siding with a 7-inch exposure, correct, Mr. Rowe? Yeah, okay. Then the fascia boards are 6 inches, which we don't see in this elevation. We'll see them in the others. And I don't see any other things. Pressure. The wood is the wood railing is pressure treated and painted. The column that's here gets a fiber cement wrap. Oh, and the siding is all fiber cement siding. The roofing is the asphalt shingles, and they have a continuous ridge vent for that. Let's see what else we have.
And this is the side where the ramp would be as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Which is not shown anywhere, I don't think. Exterior light fixtures shown here at the on the front porch. All right, so let's move to the next elevation. It's this one here, which is the rear elevation. So these are the rear steps and the rear door. We have vertical windows on this. The downspouts and gutters are aluminum, which is metal material. Then we have for the trim around the window, the side and the sill area is 4-inch, whereas the header is 6-inch. The trim across the top of the wall here is 6-inch, and the gables have this shingle style or shingle appearance for the fiber cement siding. The vents are also 16-inch diameter gable vent with 4-inch trim, and that's painted. We also have an exterior light here at the rear door. Everything else already talked about. So let's move to the next page. The next elevation is now being the front. And so here we see the same, all those same materials on the front as well. The door is not called out in this view. Let's see. Anything else? Don't see anything else to point out. Well, now we see on the gable ends, we see the fascia boards, what size they are. This one's a 6-inch fascia board.
Is that a fiberglass door?
I don't know. We can ask in a minute, because he'll need to come to the microphone to answer.
Sure.
And then this is the fourth side out of all of them. This would be the left side, the right side. I guess that is the west side. And I don't see anything new other than we have 3 windows here, and they're all vertical. Okay, so that's that. We have some details, if you need to see those. Oops, may have missed the railing detail. It's over here. No, that's on a different page. All right. So, some more details. No. Okay. All right. Those are bathroom details. All right, and structural. So, I thought you had a handrail detail in here. Maybe I missed it on another page. There it is. Okay, so here we show the handrail is has the individual spindles or balusters centered underneath the hand grip itself, and then it's also centered on the bottom portion of the railing. This is also shown to be pressure treated. The spindles are 2x2s, and everything is painted. Even the handrail and everything, all the different parts are all painted. The spacing is 5 inches on center, which could be a half an inch too much for 2x2s, which are really 1.5 by 1.5. Let's see, so that's it on that. I was just getting to the structural drawings, which we aren't too worried about. So, except maybe the foundation does show several flood openings. So we want to pay attention to those, since we do have a guideline for that. Here it does show the ramp attaching here to the side of the porch, this being the porch here. And then these are details of the stairs, foundations, and this is for the ramp. Now we see the drawings for the ramp. It does show an inappropriate handrail for that, so we want to make sure that that carries over from the previous or the other detail. But that was just the engineering. See here? Here we go. So we need this to change to the other one. All right. And moving down. So this is mechanical, so it shows mechanical units in the attic, which is important because that means it is not on a platform outside. That's the air handler. It is not outside. Sometimes they are. And it's also not underneath the house. Sometimes they are. So the one thing here is that the heat pump portion of the heating and air conditioning is behind the rear wall. We might ask them to move it a little farther away so it's not visible from the street at all, to avoid having to do any screening. Let's see. And there won't be any ductwork under here either. This is the ductwork in the attic, feeding into ceiling registers. There's the heat pump again, but now this is the electrical diagram. Not much of a concern for us. However, the meter base does have to be above the freeboard, and so sometimes that results in a platform, which this is a letter from the New Bern Electrical Department regarding height of the meter base, the actual electrical meter. So then for the zoning and inspections review, I'll make this bigger, sorry. The zoning administrator indicates that a zoning permit is required and revised site plan needed prior to zoning approval. And then the chief building inspector says, of course, this will require a building permit for both demolition and building permits are required. So when you're ready, I have the staff report available.
All right, thank you. Would the applicant like to present anything, make any additional comments?
I think what I would do is...
Yep. Can you talk to the microphone? Sorry.
And you were sworn in at the beginning, correct?
Yes. I think everything was presented in the presentation.
All right, thank you. Are there any proponents or opponents who received notice who would like to present anything? Okay.
Wait.
You mean if they received a letter?
Yes. I'm sorry, yes. If you received notice, if you received a letter, yep. Are there others who can justify they have relevant information? Okay.
Wait.
Yes, no?
Mr. Chair, we may need to swear her in, I'm not sure.
Have you been sworn in earlier?
No.
Okay. You will, if to speak, you'll need to be sworn in.
Yeah.
Can we determine standing first?
Did you receive a letter, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right, so if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth and to the best of your knowledge you provide honest answers, provide honest testimony and answers to any questions directed to you?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, and there's a sheet up there if you could sign that.
Or print your name, please.
And if you will state your name and your address.
Okay. Mary Gobus, and I'm at 315 Avenue C.
Okay?
And our only concerns, well, we have a few concerns.
Can you please speak up and speak into the microphone? It's being recorded.
And you can move the microphone. Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry?
I'm just saying you can move it so that it's comfortable for you.
We have some concerns. We moved here just before the hurricane hit, and we didn't really see our surroundings at the time. We bought the house. They were just finishing remodeling it. I would have chose a different exterior, but it is what it is. Anyways, we've had issues with them keeping up the property. The backyard, it's just jungle. And we've asked to be aware when they were taking everything down, which it's not. They just had women coming out. They tore the outside off. That has gone. They broke all the windows. That is still there. And the demolition of the house is anything the way they're going to build it, it looks really cheap and not well constructed. We're worried about that. We're worried about the backyard if and when they clean it up. It is a jungle. You cannot see the backyard. And we bought up to it. I was going to put a fence up on that side, and I just didn't think it was worth it. And I've made updates to my whole area, and I want them to do the same thing. It increases your value of your house. But right now, it is disgusting. How Wanda ever lived in there, I don't know. There's rodents that were coming in and out of there before. They're still coming in and out of there now. So we're very concerned about that.
All right.
Now, who's going to take those trees, the gigantic pine trees, in their yard? But this last storm we had, I can't tell you how many hours it took us to clean up. They haven't touched anything there. They never do. They mow the grass on the front of the house and the side. Nothing has ever done to the back. And if you're going to put a new house there, I would assume the back should be just as nice as the front.
Okay, thank you. We'll try to address some of those issues as we move forward with this. All right. Any other comments? All right, Matt, would you like to present the staff findings and recommendations?
Sure.
Can I ask a question? Are we going to determine contributing, non-contributing first?
I think we should, because I think that changes how we, I think that changes how we proceed.
I thought that was
Yes, but I think your deliberation starts after the staff report.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
And we'll only start with the demolition portion. So this is the staff report for Wanda Davison Opportunities Industrialization Center, 311 Avenue C, for the project at 311 Avenue C. The historic property name has no name and was listed as 1920, but I editorialized as being incorrect, and contributing or non-contributing perhaps to be determined. So 311 Avenue C to include demolition of the one-story house and redevelopment with a one-story infill house. The National Register Historic District Inventory for Riverside in 1988 described as a one-story frame gable roofed house with asbestos siding, replacement front porch with concrete deck and wrought iron columns. Sandbeck did not have a description. And so staff submits the following excerpts from the Historic District Principles and Design Standards are appropriate to this application, the process for which consists of two deliberations, first demolition, and if demolition is approved, then redevelopment. So deliberation 1 for demolition, process for deciding whether to approve a demolition in the New Bern Historic District is significantly different for contributing and non-contributing structures. The National Register inventory for Riverside has an incorrect construction date for the house, which according to the Sanborn map seemed to have been built after 1958, not 1920. Nevertheless, even though the house was thought to have been at least about 68 years old at the time, the inventory indicates the house as non-contributing, which must account for factors other than the age of the building. The 1920 entered in the inventory may also have been a typographic error. If built sometime before 1975, a, quote, building determined to be more than 50 years of age does not have to be treated as a contributing structure if the HPC determines that it has no architectural, cultural, or historical significance, unquote. Due to the unclarity of this situation, staff recommends the HPC to vote to determine if the house is now contributing or non-contributing. I would say maybe we could do that now, right? Before we go through all the rest.
Okay. Commissioners, comments on contributing or non-contributing?
Well, the 1988 nomination for non-contributing,
The inventory list?
or the nomination,
Yeah.
those properties which do not contribute to the character, not contributing is those properties which do not contribute to the character of the district. They may clearly be of later construction in the district's period of significance, or they may have been erected during the period of significance, but altered to such a degree that they have lost the essential qualities which would contribute to the character of the district. And so I think what they determined in 1988 was appropriate, that it was not contributing.
I would agree.
I would agree too.
Yeah, Matt's pointing out that there's no clear date of construction. You know, we've got 1920, 1940, and 1958. A couple of factors that I was looking at. Hurricane Ione showed up in October of 1954. It was equivalent to Florence. And during Florence, that whole area flooded. I mean, this house was flooded from Florence. Some two-story structures have been changed to one-story structures in Riverside because of a chimney fire that burned the second level. If you look at the pictures, if you look at the foundation of that structure, the foundation is cinder block. I didn't see any indication of brick piers, which would be typical for a 1920s house. The window placement just doesn't look like any part of a 1920s house. If you look at some of the interior pictures, the trim is not 1920s. I don't see any architectural, historical, or cultural significance of the house. So I would say that it is non-contributing.
Yeah, I visited the site as well. There is no attribute that you would say that looks historic.
Correct.
Looking inside the windows, which are gone, you can see modern white boxes, etc. The trim is not old.
So Jamie, I assume you would like a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion concerning whether it's contributing or non-contributing?
Love to. I would like to make a motion to consider the structure at 311 Avenue C to be a non-contributing structure for a number of reasons, including the 1988 National Historic Register and the observations of both the inside and outside construction and materials.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so with that, so demolition cannot be denied for a non-contributing structure. Demolition of a contributing structure requires a two-part COA, etc. And so the guidelines for demolition, if the HPC has determined the structure is a non-contributing structure, you would cite 6.4.1. Let's see, then the applicant was to provide drawings and photographically document the site prior to demolition, including photographs of interiors, exteriors, architectural elements, and context within the streetscape, and to notify preservation organizations and allow for salvage of design components, architectural features, and building materials for reuse. Those would be the only ones that would...
But isn't that for contributing?
So...
if it's non-contributing, why would you contact?
It's not... the guidelines don't distinguish between the two on those. So...
if it's non-contributing, the salvage of design components doesn't seem to make much sense.
Well, if there aren't any, then they won't have to do that. But if there are some, but it's still not a contributing structure because there's not enough of them or whatever, that would be
I suppose.
In addition, the guidelines stipulate in rendering a decision on a demolition COA, the HPC should address the following 3 considerations. And we went through this just an hour ago. Address the historical, cultural, and architectural significance of the structure. Consideration 2, address the integrity of the structure. And consideration 3, address attempted preservation efforts. You probably have already read those staff comments for that. The statements of fact would be the project is a proposal on a tight weave development pattern to demolish a non-contributing structure in the Riverside Local Historic District. 2, due to damage from flooding by Hurricane Florence in 2018, the condition of the house does not make it a viable structure. 3, the proposed redevelopment for the site will need to be approved by the HPC in deliberation 2 before COA and construction permit may be issued. Number 4, the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. And 5, the demolition of this building is not incongruous with the historic district guideline principles and standards. So, you may proceed.
Well, I would argue that since we've determined it's a non-contributing structure, we cannot deny demolition. So the considerations are somewhat moot at this point. We've determined it's not a contributing structure. The integrity of the structures, why I don't think we need to consider that. We can see from the pictures that there's not a lot of integrity there. And attempted preservation efforts somewhat irrelevant since it's not a non-contributing structure, and we feel like there's not anything that is salvageable. So,
are you making that as a motion?
As chairman, I can't make the motion.
I think what's the key is that we just don't want the demolition to occur without a development plan.
Correct.
That's our only concern.
Correct.
And so I move that we find the application for demolition of 311 Avenue C to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15411 to 15429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines and standards, based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Guideline 6.4.1, which is demolition of a non-contributing structure, shall not be denied by the HBC.
I think that's it.
The commission considered the status of structure integrity and of the building and concurs in demolition. Strike that. Findings of fact: the project is a proposal in the tight weave development pattern to demolish a non-contributing structure in the Riverside Local Historic District. Due to damage from flooding by Hurricane Florence, the condition of the house does not make it a viable structure. Proposed redevelopment will need to be approved by the HBC before the COA and construction permit may be issued. The zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly, and the demolition of this building is not incongruous with the New Bern Historic District guidelines and standards.
I'll second.
So did you get the strike? I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any discussion?
I just go from 6.4.1.
We're right to findings of fact. Yeah.
Any discussions? Any questions? Okay, so all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. And this is for demolition, so we're not issuing a COA at this point. So we'll move to the redevelopment.
Chair, I think you had a request for like a 5-minute break.
Sure.
Or you can just go.
Just go.
We'll cover it for you.
All right.
they're not taking a break, if Mr. Rush is just excusing himself temporarily, he can. But if the members need a break because we have been going on for a while, you could entertain a motion to take a brief recess. Or not.
Mr. Chair, I move we take a 5-minute break and no longer.
Until Mr.
Sure.
Rush returns.
Yeah. 5-minute recess. Do you want to second that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Considering you only have 4 people here, one leaves is kind of a.
I'll take the opportunity too.
So you want to reconsider being chairman? Tough one.
Yeah. Took a while to kind of get in the groove.
Good job.
Can you send me your email? But I can't send it other than through that.
I guess we should take this. Oh, yeah.
No, bathroom.
We've been here, 10, we've been here till 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
No, we're not going to 11.
no, but we didn't start till 6:30.
I was at a counseling once, and it went to 2 in the morning. So they said, and it happened a couple times in a row. I said, okay, from now on, if it gets to like 11:45, we have to have a special vote about whether or not we're going to continue. Because people are saying, 1 o'clock, how are you thinking?
Straight. Yeah. After working all day too.
Yeah, I don't disagree. All right.
Okay.
We're back on the book.
Shall we proceed? Okay.
All right.
Let's see, Matt, we're at the redevelopment plan.
For deliberation 2, redevelopment, staff submits the following historic district guidelines are appropriate to this portion of the application based on the plans and descriptions provided at the time of the preparation of these recommendations. Points of HPC policy, again, we went through these an hour ago. New construction should be evaluated as infill construction. A redevelopment plan must include a review and preliminary approval by the chief building inspector, and a reasonable time frame for completion of redevelopment should be provided. The chief building inspector and the zoning administrator have reviewed the proposed sketches and have commented accordingly. Time frame for completion of the project has not yet been proposed. Then staff submits the following historic district principles and design standards, aka guidelines that may be appropriate to this application for development pattern 2.1.1 and 3. For utilities, the highlighted ones are perhaps items to discuss, 2.3.1, 2, 3, and 6. For landscaping, 2.4.2 and 3. For parking, 2.7.1, 2, and 4. Design principles, 3.1.1, 2, and 4. For infill construction, 3.4.1, 2, 3, and 4. For foundations, 4.1.2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. For walls, trim, and ornamentation, 4.2.4. For windows, doors, and openings, 4.3.2 and 3. For entrances, 4.4.4. For accessibility and life safety, 4.7.2 and 3. For masonry, 5.1.5. For paint, 5.4.3 and 4. For contemporary materials, 5.5.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. For statements of fact, based on the information contained in the application, R1, the proposed structure is located in the tight weave development pattern. The project is an infill house. 3, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the Historic District design principles and standards. 4, the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. And 5, the application is not incongruous with the guidelines. The HPC may want to consider the following conditions. 1, revised plans according to changes agreed upon at the hearing shall be submitted by the applicant to the HPC staff for approval according to the guidelines and prior to the final inspection by the Building Inspections Division. And 2, a landscaping and or terracing plan that minimizes the visual impact of tall foundation walls shall be submitted by the applicant to the HPC staff for approval according to the guidelines and prior to the final inspection by the Building Inspections Division. Here ends my staff report.
Does the applicant have any other comments, anything to add to that?
No additional comments.
Okay, thank you.
I have a
Just
question.
a couple of questions while you're up there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The one question that came up was, you're going to be elevating the house. Do you have a landscaping plan to try to cover some of that high wall?
That's not a part of our contract.
So there'll be no landscaping as part of the contract around the house?
No, that wasn't provided by the state. Our contract is just to build a house.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And we will put grass these down, and we got to have like a 10-foot clearance around the house.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that brush that's there will be removed.
Around the house?
Yes.
Okay. Now, someone came earlier and talked about some of the landscaping overgrown in the backyard. Does your contract include any of the cleaning of that?
My contract only goes 10 feet
Okay.
around.
Who's going to be living in the house? You're the contractor?
Yes.
You're not the owner of the house?
No, I'm the contractor.
Are they here?
Miss Davis' son.
Okay.
And you've been sworn in at the beginning?
I can be sworn in if need be.
Yep.
Yes. All right, if you raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and to the best of your knowledge provide honest testimony and answers to any questions directed to you?
I do.
All right. And if you will state your name and you are the property owner, right?
I'm Shane Turney. The property owner is my mother-in-law, Wanda
Okay.
Davis.
All right.
Thank you.
So do you plan to have a landscaping around the property? I guess that's the question.
Right.
We will do some landscaping within the guidelines that you set forth. Right now, currently, what she has is bushes that are overgrown. Because the property was deemed structurally unsound, she has had to leave the property, and it has been remediated. So we do maintain the yard. We mow and weed eat and trim as we can. But the back side of the house has always been a natural area. There's never been grass back there. It's always been a natural area. But
would you consider maintaining the back of the backyard as well?
we do plan on cutting most of that down once the house is demolished. Right now, it's just hard to get to because there's storage pods in the yard, and then there's the house itself. And it is narrow between the fence and the house.
And who will be occupying the house? Your mother?
Yeah, Miss Davis will be.
Mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I have three questions. The material for the doors is what? The door material is what?
Fiberglass, I believe.
Door materials will be made out of fiberglass.
And the windows?
The windows are vinyl.
Oh, okay. And then on the drawing, you show the ramp. Is there no driveway? I mean,
Yeah, that was another question. It
no
shows a
drive-
ramp, but it doesn't show like a driveway or a place for the...
The existing driveway is the opposite side of the house, opposite of the ramp.
so you're going to move the driveway. Is it going to be improved? Or gravel, whatever?
Well, we didn't intend on moving the driveway, and I'm sure we'll have to make repairs based on the construction that occurs. But I don't know what that'll be at this time.
Matt, do you have a picture that shows the driveway?
There is nothing for improving the driveway.
So there's a ramp on the wrong
So-
side or just the back door?
So the photos seem to indicate that the driveway is on the west side of the property?
The picture I'm looking at, it's on the right-hand side where the door is for the front porch.
Correct, but it
And
showed the ramp on the other side of the house?
Correct.
So is that ramp just going to go to the yard? It's not going to go towards a driveway?
I believe so. I think that the issue was with the front porch, to get the length that we need for the ramp and the 1 inch per foot, it's required to go on that left side. Otherwise, it would completely circumvent the front of the house.
Can you please identify yourself?
I'm Charles Bowman with OIC.
Can, up to the microphone, please.
I'm Charles Bowman with OIC.
Okay.
So if someone pulls into the driveway in a car to get up the ramp, they have to go across the front yard to use the ramp? There's not going to be a sidewalk or a walkway or anything?
That's the way that the state gave us the plans. They did the design, they did the plot plan for the ramp, and it's on the left side, and the driveway is on the right side. Now, however, on that second lot, there is an opening there.
Yes.
So
there's plenty of room.
Yes. I'm not sure if they use it for to drive in, but that's where I assume that they would start using it if someone had to use the ramp.
But there's not a curb cut over there, though, is there?
There is this is two lots.
Right.
The lot to the side is just an empty lot. There is a driveway apron for each lot.
Okay.
That's why the driveway is on the right-hand side of the house, because that's where the driveway apron is.
Okay.
Currently, she does not use a handicap accessible ramp, but this project is through a grant from the state, Rebuild NC, and that was something that they dictated be in the project. But she currently goes, or when she was there, up the steps at the front door from her driveway.
So you're obligated to take a ramp that goes essentially into nowhere?
Now, I can't answer for the state, but
We had that problem.
you know, the government sometimes doesn't make as much sense as it should.
You know, I'm going to quote you on that.
I have some other questions about the construction.
Before you go, though,
sorry.
I see that the existing house has shrubs around it. I know those will all go for the construction on the front.
Yes, sir.
Or had at one point. I don't know if that has now.
Right. They will probably be torn down for the
I'm sure
construction
they will if they
process.
haven't already.
Yeah,
But you're planning on putting landscaping back on the front in some fashion?
It would be nice within whatever guidelines you set forth. We did maintain the bushes while she lived there and kept everything nice and trim.
Uh-huh.
Now that the house has been remediated, it's like an effort in futility. She greatly wants to improve her property, but there are limitations with the pods there. With it remediated, it's hard to keep squirrels and animals from going in and out of the house. it's sort of a difficult situation, but she's really trying to improve this property. Going through the rebuild process has been extremely slow, though, and I mean, all I can say is that she really wants to move forward and make her neighborhood look as good as it can. But within whatever guidelines you set forth, I mean, we're more than happy to put whatever shrubbery we need there.
We'll address the shrubbery and landscaping later, but I do have some concerns about the trim and some of the boards, vertical boards. You said they're 4 inches. And in the neighborhood, I'm sure we have one neighbor here, and across the street there's a couple of craftsman houses, and this looks like a craftsman house kind of. I would think that you'd want to mimic the trim size of the houses in the neighborhood. That would make it look a little more fitting. It would fit into the neighborhood a little better. I think when you have a 4-inch trim around the window and the vertical, what do you call the vertical on the side of the house?
The corner.
The corner piece. That was, I think, 4 inches.
I think it's 6.
Well, I think the uppers were 6, but I think we should ask for a wider trim on the house so that it looks more period and not so new construction.
And by the way, you're right. It's a 4-inch corner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's typical. Your house, I don't know if you know how wide your trim is. Matt's houses, I think it's at least 6 inches to 8 inches. And can we make a specification on that? Yep. Some trim around the windows?
Yes, we've done that before.
Yes, we have. And I think it'd make a huge difference in the appearance of the property.
Okay, let's see if we can kind of get back on track here. Thank you. We'll probably call on you again. Are there any proponents or opponents who received notice who would like to comment on the redevelopment?
And Mr. Chair, before we open the floor for additional comments, I think it's important to bear in mind that comments should be directed at the application as it's being proposed.
Correct.
Landscaping is not a part of this application, so any landscaping concerns are not necessarily relevant for this portion of the hearing. If a landscaping plan comes back in the future, certainly those matters can be addressed, but this is strictly on the redevelopment plan as is proposed today.
All right, thank you.
Question? When do they put those?
You'll have to speak louder into the microphone, please.
My voice. I'm sorry. When do they make the proposal for the landscaping?
They can apply to the HPC for a landscaping certificate of appropriateness. And if this board says that they want to hear that application, then notices will go out as they did today for this particular hearing.
And we notified because we're right next to them.
If this board decides that they want to hear the landscaping application as opposed to delegating it to staff, then persons within a certain range of the house will be notified of that hearing. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because the natural backyard has never been touched. Never.
Again, the application is about the proposed redevelopment. So, ma'am, if you have any questions or comments or evidence to present as to the redevelopment of the house, I think the board is inclined to hear any comments you might have.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other proponents or opponents who received notice? Any others who can justify that they have relevant information? Matt, you've already presented staff findings, correct?
Correct.
Does the applicant care to make any other comments, address anything that you've heard?
I have a question. I heard you say that you wanted a 6-inch around the windows. That's the entire window.
Trim.
Okay.
And I think, weren't you talking about the corner boards?
And the corner boards too.
Corner boards too.
Do you want that to be 6 inches continuous, or do you want a larger? continue with the detail they had a 6-inch or 4-inch.
I don't care about that. You can make that. I just think that if you look at the houses in the neighborhood on that same block, if you could match what the width of their trim is, and I think that's what you should use.
And that's typically a 5/4 by 5, which is actually 4.5.
Yeah. So.
But there's not a differential around the top. Usually it's the same around the whole window, is it not?
It depends on the house. The header, in some houses, the header is a little bit bigger.
Even on the outside?
Yeah.
Because it's.
So you were saying 4.5, not 6.
Well, here's this. It's called a 6-inch board is really 5 and something.
Well, we'll
5 1/4.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can get that sorted out.
Okay.
All right. So moving on with what we're supposed to be doing here. So the applicant has had the opportunity to address things. All right. So commissioners, discussion and questions.
Yes, I'd like to have the trim and the corner boards be reflective of what's in the neighborhood. And I think we've established they call it a 6-inch trim, but it might be a 5 5/8 board. But I think that it should be in keeping, and the corner boards are bigger than that.
That's a big.
Well, anyways, I think that would help the project look a little more authentic and fit in the neighborhood a little bit better instead of looking so new construction.
You typically want to talk about light fixtures. Do you want to talk about those?
I saw that you had light fixtures, so you can talk about them.
I just was curious if you're
they look like?
Yeah, what those fixtures are looking like, what the outside porch lights and the back light look like.
In some of the bath products, there's more of a carriage style.
That sounds great. We'd like to see what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we could provide you with some pictures and that you guys take a look at all of it, but I don't know how that very back. They are not representative of that picture.
Yeah, that one there looks. Yeah.
That's an architect's
Okay.
depiction.
I kind of thought so, but that's what we have to go on. So we'll need something maybe look a little bit. Yeah.
So, looking at the mass scale proportion detailing overall, any thoughts, comments on that?
One-story house, one-story fits in with the neighborhood.
It has a little bit of a
bungalow.
Yeah, I think
Has some dimension to it.
Yep, it's not just a box. It has a little bit of.
Right.
So around this house, there's a 1918 two-story side hall. There's several craftsman cottages. I think the detailing, construction materials, I think all of that is compliant with the guidelines. I think yes, this is new construction, but I think it will fit in nicely with with the neighborhood.
I did have a question on the part that looks like like on the side, the part that is emulating kind of the shingle look, whatever. Yeah, are those just long boards that have like an imprint on them, or are they little small pieces?
That product comes in like a 3-foot section, almost like a roof shingle, out of cement board, and then they're overlapped and staggered to create that effect.
That looks good.
Yeah, so it does have an overlap look, an actual overlap look.
Absolutely.
And the 3/12 on that front porch is okay for shingles rather than, because I think you had metal roof on that previous design. That you
Yeah, I
didn't
think
do.
312 is the minimum for a shingle.
Okay.
I had one question, or at least one point to make, and that is that the horizontal siding has to be flat and not the textured version. So as long as you're aware of that.
You're saying smooth, right?
Yeah, smooth. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Flat, smooth, right.
Yeah.
And is the 7-inch horizontal lap, is that the 7-inch exposure? Is it 7 inches that we see? Or is it a 7-inch piece that's an overlapped and it's less?
7 inch exposure. It's like an 8.5 inch. The actual siding piece is about 8.5 inches with a 7-inch, 7.25 exposure.
Exposure. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And I didn't see, it may well be here, but the foundation bricks, how high, how tall is just up to the sill? How high is that on this drawing?
I believe from the elevation, it's 3.5 feet will be basically the crawl space underneath.
Yeah, but so is that to scale on this drawing?
No.
I didn't think so. Okay, so it's actually going to be a taller foundation.
It's going to be 3.5 feet.
And longer steps and such.
This is like 6.5 bricks, is that right?
Yeah, sure.
So it's going to be a taller house.
Yes.
Which will require more landscaping.
That's right.
Definitely, we need
You
landscaping.
just think about 3.5 feet.
Yeah.
If you assume those steps are 7 inches, you're about.
Come up to the.
8 inches.
Wait.
Come on to the microphone.
If you're assuming those risers on those stairs are around 7 inches, you're about 28 inches to scale.
Okay. But I think, we need to add a requirement for a landscaping plan to the administrator and lighting plan to the administrator.
Or at least lighting fixtures.
Fixtures.
Yeah.
And just,
And the chain link fence stays or goes?
The chain link fence that you saw going across the front of the property in those pictures has already been removed.
That's right. You're right.
Yeah.
I didn't have to climb the fence. Okay.
We'll do some landscaping. She really wants to make this house look good.
Yeah.
Whatever's needed, we'll do. We just appreciate your consideration because she'd really like to move forward. This was a victim of Hurricane Florence, and it's 6 years now or so.
It's a terrible government response. Yep.
Yeah, but we're at this point, so we appreciate your time.
So I'd like to take the opportunity real quick to make sure you know that if you decide to install any fencing or driveway or remove any trees, those all require separate approvals.
Right, we're not planning on removing any trees, but we would like to make improvements to the driveway whenever construction is done. So we'll definitely, I'll be in touch with you to see what needs to be done at that time. There's not plans for a fence right now to go back, but if need be in the future, I saw what you approved earlier, so I would get in touch with you to see what needs to be done.
Good.
We no longer allow chain link fences, so.
It didn't look good. But thank you.
Okay.
And just trying to address the concerns about the upkeep of the property. We had a similar situation with a COA. I think it was on Avenue C, or was it D? It was a house that had been flooded in Irene back in 2012, and it had sat for a number of years. And probably the best thing that happened there was the house being demolished, and then the redevelopment. It was a similar situation. So we, as the HPC, we don't really deal with property upkeep for the most part. Although there's another path of demolition by neglect, but this is going to be demolished, so that's a little bit. I think that's a little bit different. We don't necessarily deal with the quality of the construction. We evaluate and vote on what's put in front of us. There was a comment about the backyard is a jungle. Well, I know from experience. I used to live in Avenue A. Is the best thing that you can do to clean up a property is to have someone occupying the structure on the property. The structure is empty. There's I mean, there's all kinds of things that can go south. So again, we're not in a position to address a lot of these things, but I think they will work themselves out once the existing structure is demolished, the new structure is in place, and we have a real live person living in the house, the owner, and actually maintaining it.
Matt, I have a question for you from a staff standpoint. Is there someone who monitors conditions of yards and things, kind of a nuisance control thing?
Yes, we have 2 nuisance abatement officers on staff.
Okay, and do they do just front yards, what's visible from the right-of-way, or can they address backyards as well?
They address nuisance conditions, and nuisances can happen in the front, side, or rear.
Okay.
And the nuisance abatement process in the city of New Bern is complaint-driven. So if someone wants to make a complaint to the nuisance abatement officers, they will investigate and apply the law as it exists.
Great. So I'm hoping everybody in the audience heard that.
And Matt, you had highlighted about utilities underground. Is it required in that area, or because typically you're dealing with whatever your neighbors have?
Yeah, this is maybe one of the guidelines that need more clarification. I think it may have been intended for right-of-way or downtown area. Because obviously there's normally stuff up in the air. So okay. I don't know what was intended at the time, but all I know is that's what's written.
Any other discussion, comments, questions? Would someone care to make a motion concerning the redevelopment plan?
Sure.
Go ahead, Jim. I could wing it, but you'd be better.
Just because I bring my papers.
No, I got you.
I move to find the application for redevelopment of 311 Avenue C to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, Sections 15411 to 15429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines and standards based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Development patterns, items 2.1.1 and 3. Utilities, 2.3.1, 2, and 6. Landscaping, 2.4.2 and 3. Parking, 2.7.1, 2, and 4. Design principles, 3.1.1, 2, and 4. Infill construction, 3.4.1, 2, 3, and 4. Foundations, 4.1.2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Walls, trim, and ornamentation, 4.2.4. Windows, doors, and openings, 4.3.2 and 3. Entrances, 4.4.4. Accessibility and life safety, 4.7.2 and 3. Masonry, 5.1.5. Paint, 5.4.3 and 4. Contemporary materials, 5.5.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Findings of fact, the proposed structure is located in the tight weave development pattern. The project is an infill house, and the proposed design, components, and materials meet the requirements of the historic district design principles and standards, also known as guidelines. The zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly, and the application is not incongruous with the guidelines. Like 2 conditions: one, that the applicant provide a landscaping plan for the property, particularly around the foundation, and secondly, that they provide lighting description of the fixtures to the administrator. Both of those can be given to the administrator.
Jim, could you add third about the size of the trim on the house?
I'm sorry, yes. And that the sideboards and corner boards and the window trim will be dimensional 6.6-inch boards, as opposed to the 4-inch on the drawing.
And a fourth item I want to make sure that we've addressed. Matt, you pointed out the handrails, something with the handrails, I forgot what it was.
Yes. The distance between balusters.
Well, there was that, but the main thing is that the structural drawings either eliminate the handrail or revise it to the standard for the district. The structural drawing had a different design for the handrails for the ramp than what we require. So they have to either eliminate that detail and reference the other one, or change the detail to conform.
If you follow that, go ahead.
So you're saying the handrail needs to be, the handrail for the ramp needs to be consistent with what's on the house?
Or with the requirements, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so the handrail on the ramp will be the same as the handrail shown for detail for the house?
Sure.
Okay.
That would work.
Sorry.
Okay, with those 4 conditions, I'll second.
All right, any questions, discussion on the motion? It's kind of an involved motion and some details with some extras. Okay, so all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have approved the demolition, we have approved the redevelopment, so we need a COA to issue the demolition as well as the redevelopment.
So move.
All right.
Second.
Any discussion?
And just to be clear, Mr. Chair, the COA is being issued with the conditions that were previously stated.
Correct. All right, so all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say no. All right. So we have approved the demolition and redevelopment, and there will be a COA
In the mail.
and coming.
You can ask him.
Yeah.
Now, you said about a landscape plan, that's not a part of our contract.
It's going to be up to the owner.
Okay.
Yeah. The lighting fixture, you can figure out.
Okay, I believe we are out of COA applications for tonight. Is that correct?
Yes. The one that we had on hold is not here.
Yeah, we need to go back and revisit, Mr. Chair, the application for 525 Queen Street.
Yeah.
I don't believe the applicant is here, so the board might want to consider continuing that application to the next regular meeting.
Okay.
I move we continue the application for 525 Queen Street to the next formal HPC hearing on March 19th, 5:30 p.m.
And justification?
Applicant not present.
is
Yeah.
not here.
Okay.
And you said March 19th, right? Yep.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Motion carries.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so if we are done with the with tonight's COA applications, we can move to old business. Old business.
We have none.
Do we have any general public comments? Yes? No?
I appreciate your consideration of 311 Avenue C tonight. If you have been on site, you can probably tell that we do try to maintain the property. We mow, we weed eat, we edge the sidewalk, the curb, and we do trim. It is difficult to get to the backyard with the house in a structural condition it's in and the pods. in the side yard. We do intend on making it look a lot better, but as you can tell, we have one neighbor that likes to complain no matter what we do. The house has had to be vacated because of the condition it's in, and we still drive across town and maintain it the best we can. We are trying to keep the neighborhood up, so I just wanted you to know that it's not being neglected. And,
Well, if you didn't care, you would have left it alone.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
If you didn't care, you would have left it alone.
Right. But I appreciate your consideration.
I appreciate it.
And I just think with the new construction, you'd be surprised how the lot will change and you can have access to the back. And
Oh, yeah.
you can
Yeah,
have
definitely.
a chance to clean that up.
Definitely. But thank you.
Thank you. And Matt, you'll follow up with the landscape plan, the requirements and stuff with them?
Yeah, they won't get their final building inspection until they do.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, so we're up to...
We've got one more.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
I think you have to swear him in. Was he here?
No,
No,
you don't
it's
have to.
general
for-
comments.
Not a testimony.
Have we formally congratulated Colonel Holton on promotion to colonel, full colonel?
Congratulations.
Had a nice ceremony at the Historic
Yep.
Preservation Society and the little library there over Thanksgiving. So thank you. It's technically I'm still on my commute home right now from Virginia, so I am keenly aware of the hour. I just wanted to say I do not envy your position tonight. Otherwise, I would be sitting on that side, right? And maybe that's my lot in life in the future. I would offer an observation. I think sometimes where the city of New Bern stops and the county of Craven begins is starting to become a little blurred. And whether I see the staff assessment as somebody who's appeared before this board, and that staff assessment, it's hard to understand the outcome. I understand why. I also observed that there's more Craven County lawyers than citizens in New Bern here for that hearing tonight. And that when I take my walks in the morning, I know that the schedule for this is publicly posted in multiple places. And so, right or wrong, public opinion will let you know eventually, as you all know. But sometimes, where one stops and one begins with the adjudication of the guidebook rules is sometimes a little, I'll offer frustrating by some people. Thank you for serving. I know it's hard.
Just as a comment is, one of the things that the chair said at the very beginning of this is that personal likes or dislikes aren't something that you can weigh in. It really has to do with the letter of what the regulations are. Yeah. And so you have to kind of work all that in as well.
Yeah, and I think, and this will be my last one, and I think part of it too is I don't think the purpose of this board, whether it does it intentionally or unintentionally, is not to satisfy buyer's remorse of individuals, whether Craven County or somebody who bought a house painted black and then realized they couldn't put a modern front door on it in Riverside. Right? The financial aspects or the utility of the property they bought should have been assessed ahead of time. Just personal observation. Quick, done, So that's all I have. Thank you.
But to be fair, they had one lawyer, we have one lawyer.
No, that's right.
We're even.
And Matt, I understand that there may be some openings in the May-June timeframe if you would like to consider a chair up here.
As much as I can attend, just to observe, and I know I don't make comments for that reason, because if you're going to complain about something, you better be prepared to sit on the other side to be a problem solver, not just a problem identifier. Tonight was a little different, just from a personal observation perspective. So this is the only time you'll hear from me on this side unless I'm presenting something on my problem.
Well, let's make it your problem.
Yeah, right.
We're going to send the nuisance guys by to see.
Okay. Any other general comments? Nope. All right, moving on. New business. And I see under new business, approval of changes to the minor works list. Matt handed out the resolution, the draft resolution, as well as the changes. So we're doing this related to the guidelines on page 1-12 of the guidelines, and then the rules of procedure on page 11 and page 24. Page 24 specifically deals with updating the minors list, so we're in compliance with that. Matt, I have highlighted the items that I think have changed. I don't know whether I have the most recent minors, the old minors work list. Do you want to point out?
So the only changes on this proposed list are the last 3 bullets on the top.
Okay.
Last 4 bullets.
I'm sorry, last 4. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Those are proposed to be added.
All right, any...
and in fact, the 4th one from the bottom replaces New Bern Bears. New Bern Bears was the...
It's a broader category
Yes.
to include the bears.
Right.
Okay. Any questions on the resolution? Would anyone like to make a motion
I
for or
do want
against?
to state my position. We had fences on here when you arrived and I were on the first time. And we took fences off because the issue I see is the way this is written, short of the administrator making some inroads with neighbors, the first time somebody knows there's going to be a fence on their property line is when the person's digging a post. And that can generate ill will. And Matt tells me that maybe he can do with some things there. But secondly, see if it maybe ought to come back to majors in the future. But we have had disagreements about property lines. But I think the worst case is, what's that guy doing in my yard? And he's putting his fence in.
Right, and that's a good point, Mr. Bisbee. I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison. It's late. There is a provision in Chapter 160D for administrative decisions, and a staff-issued COA would be considered an administrative decision, wherein notice can be given to the person who's receiving the decision to give notice to anyone who may have standing to object. We're working with staff now to create a policy and maybe some forms so that when administrative decisions, whether they're fences or other things, people know what's going on, and the appellate period to contest that decision can run before somebody undertakes a financial investment of starting their project and then perhaps having to halt it.
That's a really good idea.
Yes, because it can create even worse neighborhood problems.
Is there a setback for fences, or is it right on the fence line, the property line?
No setbacks.
And my concern was, we can't take written testimony, but somehow Matt could get a letter from the neighbor, but we don't have any evidence that it's actually a letter from the neighbor.
Well, and what I'm contemplating and what we're working with staff is not necessarily to get the adjacent property owner's blessing or objection, but to put people on notice that a COA has been issued in the same way that we do with majors, so that if someone wants to appeal that decision for any reason, they have actual notice, or constructive notice rather, they have the time period by which they can do it, and we have a process ironed out if somebody wants to make a contest. Cool. And also bear in mind that just because a matter is on the minor works list, if this is something that staff has concerns about, that always can be brought to the full board for the full board's consideration.
Yeah, I agree with what Jamie just said. There's always going to be hiccups, but I think we've worked fairly well as a team. That if Matt is feeling some heartburn about something, there's some issues around the fence or whatever, that he's been pretty good about pointing that out at the design review, and, at the design review, we can say, nope, we want this to go in front of the commission in a regular meeting.
We've done that several times.
Yeah.
Then there was some mention at the last design review that perhaps to actually say this is a minor, we need to have a quorum. Is that true?
In order for this board to make a decision, there must be a quorum.
Even though we're not at a meeting.
Arguably, design review is a meeting.
It's a meeting.
It's a meeting, y'all. There's a schedule. You publish the schedule. There's an agenda.
There's at least 3 people there.
You're talking about applications. It's a meeting. Now, you may not take action to approve or deny a COA at those meetings, but it's a meeting. The better practice is if you are customarily approving things as minor works, add them to the list. And then if there's some concern or some heartburn about a particular project, then that information obviously can be brought to you all consistent with your established procedures.
And if it's something we do say, treat this as a minor, and we've had a quorum, do we need then minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So up until now, or until recently, because of the no decision rule that we've had for design review, it's been thought that the chair would be the one who can determine whether or not an application can be handled as a major or a minor in their judgment. But that was pointed out to us that that's not an appropriate approach. So now we have to actually have the HPC make a decision, and so this is causing this change.
I don't disagree with anything we've ever done, but it's just good to clarify.
Yeah.
Don't disagree with anything that's been ever done?
No, this crowd.
Yeah, so the other thing is just because you may have some faith or trust in my judgment regarding whether or not it gives me pain or not, or something, to make a certain, to approve a certain minor work. We also have to have procedures in place that will work when I'm not here, whether it be temporarily or permanently, because these are supposed to last for a while, these.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So
given that.
Yeah, do we need to make a motion to approve
Yes,
this
sir.
Yes.
resolution?
Yes.
Now, I note that the resolution has the incorrect day on it, so I'm assuming that'll be today's date?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, I make the motion that we approve the resolution regarding the definitions of minor work permitted in primary area of visual concern and minor work permitted in secondary and tertiary areas of visual concern.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Well, one question I have to Matt. These are posted out on the website, I believe.
They would be, yes.
Yeah, I think I remember there was a list.
That's the only place we actually have them.
Yeah. Okay. So this will be updated in a timely fashion. Okay. All right. So we have a motion. We have a second. No more questions, comments. All right. All in favor of the motion to approve the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Resolution approved.
Awesome.
Okay. Oh, anything else under new business? All right. Matt, take it away. Administrator's report.
So you see the reports on our majors and minors that have been issued since November 1st, but only till February 5th, because this was the agenda we had published for the February 19th meeting on February 6th. And so just to let you know, there's many more, or at least a few more of each that would be added to this date. I only have, I have no other items and updates.
So Matt, just a quick question. On your report of major COAs, whatever, you're just really reporting on the ones that have an update or an amendment to them. Is that correct?
Under that
B.
category is for all major COAs that are new, that have been issued, any extensions to existing ones, any amendments,
Okay.
and conditional approvals that have been, conditions have been met and approved by staff.
So ones that we have made or anything that has an extension or amendment is listed in that list.
I'm sorry, again?
So any COAs that we've issued or any changes to the ones that we've issued?
Yes.
Okay.
And some of the amendments are done by staff because they're minor.
Yes.
So that's why we actually have added that now in the minors list, to make that formally acceptable.
Good.
Or clarified that it's acceptable.
All right. Anything else, Matt?
Nope.
Okay. Next item, commissioner comments. I'm commented out. I don't know about you guys.
I've had about enough of you guys.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Say second.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
9:18.
Good job.